This program deals with themes of an adult nature and is intended for a mature audience.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on the KTPF Community Talk Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for our new weekly radio shows. To accompany the KTPF Community Talk Show, we now have our own free magazine to view online or download for free. Visit our website for more details. Also, the KTPF Community Talk Show is supported by Phenomenon Magazine and Beyond Parazine, available online now. The comments and views expressed on the KTPF Community Talk Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the views of ourselves or of our sponsors.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
They've landed.
You're in the right place. Online, on the web, and on air. All over the world.
Talk Radio.
You hear us, we hear you.
Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome finally to the KTPF Community Talk Show, live and uncensored from Manchester at www.ktpf.co.uk. Broadcasting on KTPF Radio, Worsley Radio, and now on DM Radio in New Jersey, USA. So welcome to our listeners. And if you're able to use a mobile to listen to us, you can now do so at http://go to, as in the number, it.link/KTPF mobile. My name is Suzanne.
Hello, I'm Steve.
And over in Essex, we have our regular co-host, parapsychologist and historian, Andy Mercer. Good evening, Andy.
Hello, guys.
Don't do that.
He did that on purpose then.
Don't do that. Are you all right, Andy?
Do what?
Just delay it when you say hello.
I just said hello straight away. That's weird. Hello. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm fine. Absolutely fine.
Good, good, good. Are we dropping out still at your end?
Unfortunately, yes. I'm getting a very slight... It's not a delay as such. Because, well, it's a momentary delay because there's no words or sound missing. Just little gaps keep appearing in sentences, which is rather irritating. So, again, if I find myself interrupting or talking over somebody accidentally, it's because there's been a dropout and I thought to stop speaking. So I apologise in advance.
Okay, no problem. Well, now, for our new listeners, we are here keeping the paranormal friendly each and every Sunday. So pull up a chair, relax with us while we bring you a show full of the supernatural, the paranormal, and other strange phenomena. Now, as always, we would like to start by acknowledging our listeners this evening and to remind you that if you have any questions for us or our guests, you too can get involved with tonight's show via our live interactive chat room. You can also call the show by adding ktpf.paranormalshow to your Skype contacts. But we asked you if you could just pop a little message in at the same time to let us know that you are a listener. So also a big hello to our listeners on our radio replays over on the YouTube channel at KTPF Community Show, which is where you will also find all our previous shows dating back to March 2012. Later, we will have the rundown of the events in the UK provided by our sister site at paranormaleventsforyou.com. Right, just to let you know what's coming up tonight. Around about 8:30, we will have author Neil Spring. Now, Neil was born in South Wales in 1981. He started writing at the age of 28, and between 1999 and 2002, he studied philosophy, politics, and economics at Somerville College in Oxford. In 2012, he published the book called The Ghost Hunters, a paranormal thriller based on the life of Harry Price. The Ghost Hunters received outstanding reviews, and the rights have been acquired by Bentley Productions, part of All 3 Media, who produced the hit British television drama Midsomer Murders. The Watchers is his second novel, and which was published on the 24th of September 2015. Neil now lives in London, so we'll be talking to him about his books and how he managed to glean all the information about Harry Price, and to see how production is going with the new drama that's coming along. Steve.
Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't get the words out.
It's like, keep going, give us, so I can get the old observations out the way before we get our guest on. Someone shut that silly animal up. Don't know what he's barking at. Right. Here we go for the first observation, young ladies and gentlemen. I found this on a site called Phantoms and Monsters. Hello, I noticed your article about a small dinosaur in Hebronville, Texas. This witness was not exaggerating because I have seen an unknown animal in a field here in Hebronville. It was April 2011. I was walking along W. David Street, I assume that's west, to my friend's home in Vandala Road. At about 5:45 p.m. I had just gotten off work, and on the side of the road where I was walking I saw dust being kicked up into the air and moving along the field. Then the trail of dust was heading towards the road in front of me. I stopped walking, not knowing what may be exiting the road. About 40 foot in front of me was what I can only describe as a little T-Rex dinosaur. About 2 or 2.5 in height. It didn't stop running as it dashed across the road into a smaller field. It was light reddish brown, stood on 2 legs and had a long tail. It was straight out as it ran there. There was no way that this was a lizard known to live here. It looked very much like the photo of a toy I found online. No one wanted to believe me. My friends and family think I mistook it for another lizard, but I know what I saw. Until I read your article, I thought I may be going crazy. I do believe there is a strange creatures around here. My ex-husband used to talk about huge birds and walking shadows that he and others would see on a ranch south of Hebronville. At one point, several cattle would go missing without trace. He would never stay there at night. Well, if you're wondering what article they're talking about, on the page it is further down, okay? That's for those who can see the links in the chat room. Okie dokie. And we got, I have an app for you. A new ghosty app.
Oh no.
Oh yes, a ghosty app. I just gonna stick it in there for you. There we go.
Pardon?
There you go. Ghost App Analyzer. Ghost EVP Analyzer, rather. The bottom line, the app can actually serve as a substitute for your voice recorder or as a supplemental EVP recorder. Its analyst function allows you to listen to the playback at normal speed, half speed, and even in reverse. The pros for it is nice graphic interface, easy to use, and very good sound quality. Handy features such as half speed and reverse playback is good explanation of app functions. The cons, it only has few basic analytic tools. No save function from the record or playback screens. Description of it says the sound recorder for experimenting with EVPs, electrical voice phenomenon app for Android smartphones. Record, save, playback recordings for ghost hunts, playback for normal speed, half speed and reverse speed at a price of a hefty, are you ready for this? $1.60. That is cheap.
It's cheap.
Pretty much. No, no. We'll make someone rich.
Having said that, it is an app for your phone, so please be careful when you have a look at that one. But probably worth a look, if nothing else. So some of these apps are quite good at times. Not that you can take a lot of notice of them, mind you, because they are what they are. Here we go. There's your next one. What's that? That's right. Just checking on the old chat room there. Okay. Bizarre UFOs that resemble the Star Wars Millennium Falcon have been photographed separately in North and Central America. The first sighting of the strange series of lights up to 180 meters across was said to have resembled the back of the fictional Rebel Alliance craft while in flight. It was seen by 4 people in Coney Island near New York and has been reported to Mutual UFO Network, otherwise known as MUFON. Roger Marsh of UFO website Open Minds TV said a New York street photographer driving in Coney Island reported capturing a dish-shaped object while taking rapid-fire images of a bridge. The witness was with 3 friends on their way to pick up another friend. The photographer, who was not been named, said, "I always carry my camera with me. At the time I shot with the Fujifilm X-T1 and had it on machine gun mode for rapid shots. We were passing by the bridge and I decided to take a rapid fire some shots of the bridge freehand and did not have my eye on in the sight of the viewfinder. What caught my attention was a sudden string of flash at the corner of my eye, kind of like lightning, but in the distance. At that moment I took my finger off the shutter and reviewed my photos. From the rapid fire, when I came across the object, the witness does not believe that the object was visible for very long." He added, "The object moved at such a speed that I only had it in a frame for about maybe 2 seconds. It was moved from front of the bridge out into the frame in a small amount of time." So there you go. It does look like the engines at the back of the Millennium Falcon. I will give him that on the picture. What do you guys think?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to help out somebody trying to get online.
Okie dokie.
Andy?
You carry on.
So
What do you think, Andy?
Right, it's just the fact that we expect, certain things you'll see random dots and shapes, and we're able to make out something we actually recognise from it. It does look like the back of the Millennium Falcon, but it could be just a string of lights. It could be anything. Of course, there is at the moment one of those, what those things called, the things you can buy that hover around with remote control. What they're called? Well, those things
Drone.
go out that looks like the Millennium Falcon. So
Yeah.
you seen that one?
I mean, I have actually seen one on that looks like the Millennium Falcon. Actually on on Facebook.
All right, this is very quite popular, aren't they? Buzzing around.
Yeah.
It could easily be one of those, but I mean, it's just a string of lights that maybe look like it, but because we know the Millennium Falcon's sort of in the collective mind, if you like, that when you see something that looks like it, that's what you're going to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the consciousness, isn't it?
Exactly. That's the word.
And as we always say, your mind does tend to make something of it that you already know. So if you see something like that, your mind naturally tries to go through everything it's seen before and puts that picture to it, doesn't it?
Well, exactly, yes. That's, our human nature is that we will trying to make sense of an image, understand where it's come from, what it is, etc., rather than, and we tend to grab at, if you like, what makes sense to us in terms of our belief systems, our expectations, those sort of things, and that's how we will see something that accords with what we're used to seeing or what we expect to see.
Yep. Having said that, if you do believe that UFOs are actually visiting us, it could be one large craft or several small ones.
Of course, absolutely. Or just a bunch of lights.
Right. Here's one that might interest you, Andy, since you are into your biblical texts and the likes. Has ancient biblical city of Sodom been found?
Sodom?
Sodom. They haven't found Gomorrah yet, but they may have found Sodom. The ancient city of Sodom, which the Bible says was destroyed by God for its wickedness, may have been found according to a team of American archaeologists. Popular archaeology reports a 10-year dig headed by Stephen Collins of the New Mexico Trinity Southwest University has unearthed a gold mine of ancient monumental structures and artifacts that are revealing a massive Bronze Age city-state that dominated the region of Jordan's South Jordan Valley, even during the time when many of the other great cities of the Holy Land region were either abandoned or in serious decline. The site on the northeastern side of Israel's Dead Sea is known as Tel al-Haman. There we go. Very little was known about the Bronze Age in the Middle Gore, that's the southern Jordan Valley, before we began our excursions in 2005. Collins told the magazine most of the archaeology maps of the area were blank, or mostly so. What we've got on our hand is a major city-state that was, for all purposes, unknown to scholars before we started our project. Collins says the comparison to the remnant of the other ancient sites in the region, Tel El Hammon, it is likely the best candidate for the lost city of Sodom, which God firebombed in the book of Genesis for its astonishing breaking of God's law. Tel Hammon seemed to match every Sodom criterion demanded by the text. Collins explained, theorizing that on the basis of the Sodom text, that Sodom was the largest of the Kikau, the Jordan Disk, as well-watered plain in the biblical text, cities east of the Jordan. I concluded that if one wanted to find Sodom, then one should look for the largest city on the eastern Kikau that existed during the Middle Bronze Age. The time of Abraham and Lot, when we explored the area, the choice of Tel Elam as the site of Sodom was virtually a no-brainer, since it was at least 5 to 10 times larger than any of the other Bronze Age sites in the entire region, even beyond the Kikau of the Jordan. So what do you think, Andy? Is it possible that they could have found Sodom?
It's certainly possible, absolutely. Doesn't mean they have, but it's certainly possible.
Yeah.
I don't know. It looks like a possible candidate. I mean, a lot of these biblical stories, I believe, are based on something, some reality to it. I remember seeing a program a little while ago about the walls of Jericho collapsing, suggesting there may have been a minor earthquake at the time, hence the reason why the walls collapsed. So, yeah, it's possible, certainly. Yep. So, it's where the phrase Sodom comes from, of course.
Yeah, it raises a couple of questions to me. I mean, they're calling it Sodom. I always thought it was called Sodom and Gomorrah. Or maybe that's just something that's added out, or maybe the Gomorrah is actually a separate place.
Yeah, it is. They are different places.
Either way, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I've learned something. I've learned something today.
It's not really where the term Sodom comes from, by the way. They just made that up.
No, that's probably from the Irish.
Yeah, done it.
That is me done, my dear.
Oh, right, okay.
Are you still having problems trying to get somebody on?
Yeah, there's a few people that preferred the old live stream, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm still on live stream. I'm still looking at live stream.
You're still looking at it?
I can't see you, obviously. I can only see the chat room itself, as you've got our logo and people talking.
I can't remember where the link is, to be honest with you. There's a couple of people that they're having problems with sound because of their laptop and what have you. So what I'm going to do is, I'm hoping this isn't going to...
Well, leave that where it is and just send them the live stream.
That's what
link.
I'm going to do.
That will do nicely. I know Vector Man said, where's the button for so you can see us?
Apparently it's being used, my camera.
It is. It's just come on.
I don't know why it's not. It's not come on. So might have to bear with us for this week, guys, and
we shall sort it for you.
We'll sort it for you for next week. So we can give you the link if you prefer the live stream. You can go back to that. So tell them to open one of the icons. Try one of the icons under the player. Try all of them. See what happens. Okay, because this is a new format we're trying to do, because live stream kept falling out on us. That was the problem, and we didn't want that, did we? So
no, we kept losing it, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yes,
which was getting a bit of a problem, to be honest with you. That's why we decided to go here.
I would try one of the icons, but I'm recording, so I did not want to try it out.
So
right, Mr. Collins,
who's Mr. Collins?
I don't know.
Everything's going wrong today.
I was just reading about Mr. Collins.
Was you?
Yes, I was.
Everything's going wrong today. That's what the problem is. Pardon?
I keep seeing a picture of myself and Ben talking about 9/11. It's like it's haunting me at the moment. Go away!
I don't know.
Oh well.
But as I say, I'll have to try and find it. So, which at the moment I'm having troubles. So I did have it just now, and
Yeah,
it disappeared.
and Ghost Rider is saying he's having a job here in this on his laptop.
Yes. So, but
blimey,
mind you,
no.
mind you, it's very loud, but that's with his with his fan going. Is there a volume button on your sound broadcaster there, where you could turn?
it's fine. It's right up.
Right, so it's not.
It is right up.
It is not us then. We are all the way up.
So
Never mind. Let us continue, as we say.
I'll tell you one thing I forgot to do.
What did you forget to do?
I'm glad you're recording.
Because you forgot to record.
I forgot to put the mic on.
Oh,
God.
Oh.
Oh well, I'll get there in the end. Don't worry.
If you didn't put the mic on, is that your mic or them?
Sam Brogston mic.
Oh, so it can record.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going on. My head's gone. I'm afraid. What we're gonna do is, I'll get used to it. I promise you, I'll get used to it.
It will be tip top A #1 next week. Believe me.
So I don't know.
We will get onto it.
Let's hope there's the.
Is our guest nearly ready?
Let's have a look. Yes, he is. So we're going to get him on the phone now.
On
And
the
hopefully
phone.
that won't go wrong. So, right, we're going to be talking to Neil Spring, and we're going to be talking about his book. His first book, which is, as I said, is coming out into a drama, and also we're going to touch on his second book as well. Evening, Neil.
Good evening. How are you?
Not too bad. It's nice to have you back on the show again.
Yes, I'm delighted to be back on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Great.
That's good.
Perfectly.
Can I just say before you carry on there with Neil, if for those of you that are not listening via our KTPF site, if you'd like to go over there, you can put any questions you have on the chat room.
Yeah.
You don't have to hit the logo to play again. But the chat room will be open for you to ask any questions of our guests.
Yes.
So please do.
Okay, so just to refresh your memories, Neil Spring has a lifelong interest in the paranormal and unexplained. And during a visit to the Harry Price Library of Magical Literature at Senate House in Bloomsbury, he discovered a wealth of material which provided the inspiration and basis for his first novel, The Ghost Hunters. But what about the person behind this new novel, or that novel? How does he juggle writing a book and a full-time job? And has he seen a ghost? Right, as I said, good evening, Neil. First of all, I would like to, could you just give our listeners a little bit of a background information on yourself?
Sure. Well, I live in London, and I do have a full-time job, as you say. I work in corporate communications and public relations, which is very handy when you're trying to promote a book. But I have had, as you say, a lifelong interest in the unexplained and the paranormal. I grew up in southwest Wales. And I'd have to say that my interest in this area was ignited in part through personal experience and in part through hearing local stories told to me by people I regarded as being credible and reliable. And the combination of the two led me to write a thesis on the subject of the paranormal when I studied philosophy at the University of Oxford. And it's been with me ever since, really. And I would say that that interest sort of came to a head in 2013 with the publication of my first book, The Ghost Hunters, which is based upon the investigation of Harry Price's Borley Rectory, which I'm sure many of your readers will be, your listeners will be familiar with.
Yeah.
And my second novel, which has just been published, is called The Watchers and concerns the subject of UFOs, which I wanted to tackle. Because I think it's one of those subjects that has not really been frightening in fiction for a long time, and I wanted to have a go at that.
Right, okay. So let me just get back to where I was. We're having a bit of technical problems tonight, teething problems. As I said, we are using new servers tonight, so please bear with us. It's thrown me a little bit, I'm afraid. Do you believe in ghosts? Has anything supernatural ever happened to you?
Well, I have to say, when I was a youngster growing up in Wales, there was one There was something that happened to me that made me wonder. We moved into a new house shortly after the death of a family member whose house it was, and I do have a very clear memory of waking up one morning, and I could hear my father shouting downstairs towards my brother. He was asking him to be quiet, and there was a very loud noise coming from downstairs. The only noise I can liken it to, if you know when you open a sort of cutlery drawer, knives and forks drawer in the kitchen, if you open that drawer, it makes a very particular rattling sound.
Yeah.
Well, it was that sound, and it was coming over and over again. And my father yelled to my brother to be quiet and stop, and it did stop. And my memory is of getting out of bed and noticing that my brother's bedroom door was very firmly closed. I went downstairs and I went into the kitchen. I flicked on the light, and the knives and forks drawer in the kitchen was open. Now, I can't explain how it came to be open or what caused that event, but I do have a very clear memory of it. And when I look back at my interest in this subject, it's tempting to say that was a formative experience, maybe in leading to my interest, and it's certainly leading to my interest in the paranormal and in ghosts in particular.
Right. Okay. So,
but I imagine many of your listeners are familiar with the poltergeist phenomena, and it does sound something like that, doesn't it?
yes, definitely. Yeah, there is definitely definitely sounds a bit like that. Definitely. Right. Okay. The next question I want to ask you is: ghost stories are always a good subject matter. Why do you think ghosts and hauntings remain so popular?
That's a really, really good question. I think that obviously the potential of life after death generally is a very seductive subject for many, many people, and because quite frankly, who does not want to believe that there is something waiting for us in the next life? But I think ghost stories in particular are seeing a certain rise at the moment, and I think that's partly because, to be honest, the more explicit elements of horror have been done to death in Hollywood. People are very, very now familiar, I think, with the explicit monsters that Hollywood has shown us for so very, very long. But ghost stories in particular, what's interesting to me is that they're popular at this particular time of year. So in October and in the run-up to Christmas. And if you think about what do ghost stories have in common, well, they all have remorselessly bleak settings, and they all have themes of pain and fear. And I think that's really odd, because if you think about it, Christmas time is a time of joy and a time for, love and reflection. Whereas if you think about the best ghost stories, the Turn of the Screw or the Woman in Black, well, they all concern themselves with subjects like despair and the destruction of hope and love. But I have to say, what I think they all have in common are people. And if you think about Harry Price, for example, who's in my novel The Ghost Hunters, well, it's their memories and their experiences that most ghost stories are concerned with. And I think the Victorians really understood this very well indeed. It was a Christmas tradition for the Victorians to clear the fireside. But it's the ghost story that dominates Christmas now is also a Christmas carol. And
yes.
I think that just as the Victorians would gather around trees and roaring fires and tell ghost stories, we now, buy these ghost stories as books, or we gather around our televisions and watch them on TV. And I'm pleased to the Ghost Hunters is going to be on television. I can't tell you when, but it is coming up, and I know they've finished filming it, and it's going to be a film on ITV this winter.
This winter?
Yeah, it's coming up very shortly.
Oh, good.
But I have the actual transmission date yet, but
Right.
they are going to put it out quite soon, I think. Hope.
Right, we're getting some dropouts on Skype tonight. I don't know why. It must be the atmospherics, but keep going, won't you? Who would you say had been your biggest influence with you in your writing, Neil?
Well, I do think Stephen King is a great influence, just because I think he tells a bloody good story. And I think, I don't pretend to produce literary works of art, but I do think it's important to have people continuing to turn the page.
Yeah.
And hopefully then my books do that. But I would also say that my favourite ghost story is a ghost story by Charles Dickens called The Signalman. And I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but it's basically about a chap working at a railway station who is holding a very lone and desolate spot and begins to hear the wires, as he puts it, singing in the wind. And that's something it's a very unsettling ghost story. It's not very long, but it's one of the best in my opinion.
Yes, I've heard quite a few people mention that one, to be honest with you. Now, when it came to the ghost stories, what were you doing when it came to ghost hunters?
I'm not.
Sorry? Who was that? Oh, I thought I heard somebody. Did you say something, Neil?
Where's he gone?
Hello?
Hello.
We seem to have lost Neil.
Seem to have lost Neil. Are you there, Neil?
I'm here.
Oh, right.
Right here.
Right, okay.
I'm right here.
Okay. What were you doing before you wrote Ghost Hunters? What inspired you to do so?
Well, The Ghost Hunters is obviously based upon the story of Borley Rectory, the most haunted house in England, and I was interested in that tale for a long time. I was particularly interested in the man who investigated it, Harry Price.
Yeah.
And I went to his library, which is located at Senate House, which is part of the University of London, and it's a very, very peculiar place, Senate House. It's a very tall building. At one point, it was the tallest building in London. And it was going to be the headquarters for Hitler and the Nazi Party if they had ever won the war. Well, I went there because I wanted to look through Harry Price's old letters and his correspondence and his papers on the investigation of Borley Rectory. And what I found there, you have to picture that it's a very, very odd place. So the only way to get up to the top floors of Senate House are in a very small lift, which is about the same size and shape as a telephone box, and the librarians who work there call it the coffin, and the whole place has a rumor of ghost stories about it. Anyway, when I was looking through all of these papers, what I found was a couple of papers written by a woman called Lucy Kay, who was Harry Price's secretary after the First World War.
Yeah.
And she described how she went to work one morning at his house in Queensbury Place in South Kensington, where he was testing fraudulent mediums, putting them to the test, learning about, basically exposing people who he thought were preying on the loss of dead ones, preying on people's grief, and she went to work for him. And she said, this was my first day at the Ghost Factory. And she describes how he was there at the launch of his laboratory, and he was surrounded by journalists. And she went up to him and she said to him, Harry, this must be an extraordinarily busy place to work. And he said, well, it is a busy place to work. And she said, well, do you have a secretary? And he said, no, I don't. But there's a vacancy. And can you type? And from that moment, she became his partner in crime, as it were. And having read this, I thought, well, that sounds to me like a bloody good way into a good story. And that's really where, if you've read The Ghost Hunters, you'll know that my fictional character, Sarah, That's really how she meets Harry, and that's based on real life, really. And the trick was to take what happened to them at Borley Rectory and to take their experiences and make it interesting, because there was a lot that happened that wasn't that interesting, to be perfectly honest with you. If you wade through all the papers, there's a whole morass of things that, you know, make you think, well, did something odd happen there or didn't it? Well, what I wanted to do was find out, why would a woman who was in her 20s fall for a guy like Harry Price? And why would she follow him into darkness? What was in it for her? And where did it lead her?
Yeah.
And hopefully that's the story that comes out of the Ghost Hunters.
Right. What was her name again? Because you dropped out when you said it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where did I drop out?
When you said her name.
Oh, right. So her name was Lucy Kay. That was his secretary's name.
Right. Okay.
And my character, I created a fictional character called Sarah.
Right.
For dramatic purposes.
Right. Okay.
Because the two women were very, very different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, in the book, as you say, we see it through the eyes of Sarah Gray, and she seemed to have a very close relationship with Price. What did you make of their unique partnership, or even so, Lucy's?
That's a good question. Well, I have to say that, I mean, Harry Price, I can imagine, was probably very attractive to young women who were impressionable and who, because, you know, he presented a facade which was one of extreme wealth. And I have to say that he wasn't a wealthy man. If you know anything about Harry Price, I'm sure you do, he was a bag salesman, a paper salesman, and he spent much of his time and his wife's money indulging his interest in the paranormal. And was able to do that because his wife was the daughter of a very wealthy jeweler. Now, he kept his wife, as far as I can tell, pretty much a secret to people in his London life. And his wife lived in Pulborough, which was where his house was. And I thought that was quite an interesting way in from a character, seeing his you know, coming to his life for the first time. What would she think about somebody who had a secret wife? I mean, there was elements of Mr. Rochester there from Jane Eyre, you know, but also, why would she follow him into darkness? And I had to answer myself as an author that question for my character, Sarah. And the reason I came up with was because, quite frankly, you know, this was a time of extreme grief after the First World War, and we wanted to understand why, you know, why a young girl would follow a man who exposed fraudulent mediums. The answer was obvious, because her father had died in the war, and because her mother was spending a huge amount of money visiting mediums. And if you see the film that's going to go out on ITV, this is a plotline that has been explored to some length in that film. I would say never expect an adaptation to be so faithful to the book, but that is one element they have kept faithful.
Oh, that's good then.
Yeah,
that's good.
One
then.
of the few.
Yeah, because they don't normally do that, do they? They stray away a bit.
They definitely stray away. But we're hoping with this series that the film that goes out is a pilot. So we're hoping that then becomes a returning TV series with a different investigation every week.
Oh, that'd be brilliant.
And I know they have written the first 6, so I do know what the plots are and what they're proposing. But again, it all really depends on whether people like it. You know, people have got to like the first one.
Are you saying that if they come back with the series, it'll be around Harry Price's investigations?
Yes.
Or they won't be making anything up.
If they come back with a series, it will be a different investigation each week.
Yeah.
So, for example, I know one of the episodes is focused on an investigation of a haunted tube station in London. And so, but you know, I can't say anything really more about it because it just depends. But you can imagine the X-Files set in
Yeah.
1920s England.
Yeah,
That's
I'm just trying to.
that's
I'm just
show
trying
you're
to
looking
work
at.
out whether they are actually will be actually Harry Price's investigations, but dramatised.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Some of them will be,
Right.
and some of them won't.
Right.
Some of them won't be.
Okay.
But I can tell you now that the film that's been made does not feature Borley Rectory. It features a fictional investigation of a house.
Right.
But if you know anything about the Borley haunting, you will basically see many things that you recognise. So it is heavily influenced by it. And I mean, I think they've done a great job, to be honest. And I'm not paid to say that.
Yeah.
I think they've done a great job.
Felix in the chat room, she's just said maybe they'll do one on Jeff the Talking Mongoose.
Well, that would be great. That would be great because I went to, funnily enough, I did visit the Isle of Man to give a lecture there last year, and I went to see the place where the Talking Mongoose incident occurred. Now, I don't know if your listeners are completely familiar with what happened, but there you had a remote farmhouse where a whole village really was caught up in the stories of a young girl in this farmhouse who could hear this disembodied voice.
Yeah.
And it quickly became the talk that it was a talking mongoose doing this. In actual fact, nobody really knew who was doing it, and it was speculated that the child might have been doing it and might or might not have been possessed. But it was a great story, and Harry Price, if there's one thing that man knew, was a good story. You know, he was if you read his books now, they still, you know, he was in some ways a journalist at heart.
Yeah.
And in some ways a fantasist, but he knew how to tell a good yarn.
With regards to Borley Rectory, do you think Harry was genuine, or do you think natural causes were the factor of the haunting?
I think natural causes had very little to do with what was happening in that house.
Mm-hmm.
If we mean by natural causes, you know, sounds and freaking, this, that, the other, you know, there were rats in the house, and certainly Mrs. Smith, who was the first, after the Bull family, she was the first incumbent of the rectory, who actually brought the haunting to the attention of the world at large, unwittingly to the Daily Mirror in 1929. Many years later, she did say there were rats, and we never considered the place to be haunted.
No.
Which is interesting because it was, don't forget, she and her husband who first contacted the Daily Mirror and said, we need the help of an expert. And of course, the Daily Mirror then wisely contacted Harry Price and sent him down, and the legend was created. Do I think there was more to it than that? Absolutely, yes. There can be no doubt in my mind that Marianne Foyster, the second incumbent, was playing away with the gardener and was probably willfully and gleefully deceiving her husband, who was the rather frail old Lionel Foyster. And I happen to think that actually, you know, some of the villagers probably did conspire and come up with and cook up a few stories, and it was probably in Harry Price's interest, once he realised that his publishers wanted more books on the subject, to come up with those stories himself. And he didn't really go about doing that in a very, I don't think he went about doing that in a duplicitous way. He was more clever than that. I think he put an advert in the Times. He invited people to come and investigate the house, and he left them alone. He basically left them alone to do what they wanted, and he let human nature play its part. People went to that house. People were people. You know, they experienced things. They read things into those, and he wrote them up. And, you know, if you're asking me, do I think there's something very, very genuine in Borley? I do, actually. I do. I don't think it's anywhere near the scale that people imagine. But I've been to the village many times, and I will be visiting the village with the Sun newspaper in the next few weeks for a feature that you'll see online. But I do think there's something there, and the reason is because we visited the place just before the book was published, and I went to the location that the house once stood at with a friend who had a car with the top came off. So we were driving along, and he stopped the car, and he said he could hear the sound of something on the road, and he described horses galloping basically. And he did not know where we were. We were on a road called Hall Road, which is anyone who knows the Borley story knows the road that's made by stories of the kinds of coach and horses on that road. Well, I had to say I didn't hear anything at all, but he was very emphatic that he did.
Yeah.
And when we got into the village, I got chatting with a local, and I asked her, I mentioned this. She said to me, listen, there's never been anything here. Harry Price made it all up. The whole thing is a nonsense. And then I told her about the sounds that we did on the road into the way into the village. And she looked at me with this sort of knowing look. And she said, yes, people do keep saying that.
Yeah.
And she looked quite unsettled, to be honest. And she said to me, but if things do happen in this village, I'm hardly likely to tell somebody like you, am I? So...
Yeah.
I need to be open-minded about these things, but I do think there's something in it.
Right. Now, Harry Price's magical library that you went to, obviously there's a lot of research behind your book. First of all, could you tell me whether it's open to the public? And secondly, how long did it take you to write the book?
So it took me about 3 years to write the book. I don't know, much of that was research, and then I rewrote the book about 3 times.
Yeah.
And I would say that the most interesting part of writing the book was visiting the magical library at the Senate House. So the library is the largest library on the occult and mysterious happenings anywhere in the world. And it was a lifetime project for Harry Price, putting this library together.
Mm-hmm.
Harry was always interested in looking for official endorsement of his work. So the reason it resides with the University of London is because eventually he was chucked out of the premises that he had for his laboratory, which he was leasing at the time. And he had to find someone to take it. And he did manage, to his credit, to convince the University of London to take it. And for many years, the library was stored on the, I think, the 8th floor of the Senate House building, in a very small room, and was presided over by a man called Alan Wesencraft. And it was the case that anybody could visit it and go up and look at the items there. A few of them, I believe, were stolen, which is unfortunate. But now, that library, as it's presented in the prologue to my novel, no longer exists. Obviously, Senate House is there, and all of Harry's books and belongings are still there.
Yeah.
But to look at them, all you need to do, and any of your listeners can do this, is just go online and look up Senate House listing, and you'll see a full list of all the books that are stored there. And you can turn up, and indeed you can ask to see them, and they'll bring them to the reading room, and you can see them there. And everything is there, from all the original letters on Borley Rectory and Harry Price. It's all there. And I have to say, I spent days and days and days there wading through that material. It was fascinating.
I bet it was. Now, whilst I was Googling all about ghost hunters, etc., I came across one critique, okay, whether you can clear this up for us. It said that in your book you mentioned videotapes. Now, we know that Harry Price did take a cinematograph camera with remote electric control and films whenever he went on investigations. So I was wondering whether the use of the word videotapes was more poetic license on your behalf. I haven't got that far into the book, so to be honest with you.
I think that I think that it's quite possible that I have made a mistake in writing the word videotape, and it was probably more accurate to describe.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Describe it in other terms. But as for whether Harry did have a video. I'm going to use the word again, a video camera. He had a camera that recorded moving images. And that's really explicitly what I meant in the book.
Yeah, because there was a version of type that came out round about the 20s, wasn't there? And there was something that came out back in the 1800s, wasn't there, Steve?
There was. The actual camera, yes.
Yeah.
But,
maybe
the actual video...
Handheld.
There was one that came out that would have been about when he was doing what he was doing the filming, but it still would have been film and not
video
and not actual video.
Right,
and not video.
Yeah.
Which I think is a very fair.
Yeah.
It's a very fair point. I think that when the reality is that when you're writing a 500-page manuscript and you're focusing. I mean, for me, the focus is, yes, you're interested in the historical detail. You want to make sure all of these things gel together, but you're thinking about characters, you're thinking about their motivation, you're thinking about plot, you're thinking about all these things. The chances that you'll overlook a word like video or film is probably pretty high, although actually probably writers better than me will get it right. But, it's a good point. But
yes.
It's interesting also because I went back to the library because shortly after the book was published, the curator of the library got in touch with me because I spent so much time there, and asked me about, told me actually that they had some new footage of Harry Price that had been transferred from his films at the time in the 1920s and was now available to watch on CD.
Oh, wow.
So I went there because in my mind I was thinking, oh my goodness, they've got film of Borley Rectory, which of course everyone knows doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I went there with my heart in my mouth, thinking I was about to see something that nobody had seen before. And it was not film of Borley Rectory, I'm sorry to say. It was film of Harry filming a firewalking experiment and films a film of he and his secretary in Germany, I think. But it was slightly eerie watching him looking at the camera. I have to say, it made me think. Well, it made me think. I wonder how he would feel knowing that somebody's just written a book about his whole life, and that's going to be on television.
Yeah.
And I think he'd probably quite like that idea.
I bet
to be honest, because he was a bit of a showman.
Yeah, yeah. Now the novel isn't just about hauntings, though, is it? It's about the interpretation of haunting and the nature of belief. Was it important that the book was more than just a ghost story?
Was it? Ask me that again. I'm sorry, I misheard you.
Right.
Was it important that it was more than a ghost story?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Because, well, I think firstly, most ghost stories are stories about loss and about people that we love who are no longer there.
Yeah.
And I think that's certainly a theme that comes through in the book. But it was also, I mean, for me, it was interesting to go back to the 1920s and the 1930s and to examine that period. I also wanted to look at what happened to the people who lived in that house in Borley Rectory in particular, because, I think they probably had a really rough ride of it. But if you consider the first tenants after the Bull incumbency, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they'd come over from India, and the poor couple really had no idea what was waiting for them. They arrived in a village that was, there were probably some people there who didn't really sort of trust them, given that they'd come over from India. They had to build new relationships very quickly, and they had to do that. They had to do that in an environment where everyone was saying, "Well, look, this local house is haunted." And I thought, well, how would they have responded to that? How on earth did Marianne Foyster, she was only very, very young, married to a much, much older husband, deal with living in a place that's really the back end of beyond, with nothing to occupy her time? How did she feel about that? And
and how did the locals respond to Harry Price just taking over this building and putting an advert in the Times newspaper asking groups of people to go there and march around the place and write up their own investigations? It's not that different to what happens these days.
No.
People turn up with their little video cameras and start filming, and their electronic voice, recordings and everything else, and putting it on the internet and creating TV shows. In some ways, I thought he was quite ahead of his time, and I wanted to sort of explore that, through the era.
So how did you filter out the elements you wanted to use?
How did I feel about the elements?
How did you filter out? Yeah, when you looked at something.
How did you decide which bits to put in the book?
Yeah.
So you've got to make a decision about basically what's going to tell the best story, because I wasn't writing a piece of history.
No.
I wasn't writing all the books on history on Borley Rectory and Harry Price have been written, and they're all wonderful, and everyone should go and read them as far as I'm concerned. But I wanted to tell a dramatic plot, and that meant leaving out some significant chunks. It meant disregarding things. It meant, for example, ignoring the fact that Harry Price's original secretary was somebody who constantly asked him for money, who lived in Paddington alone, I think, who was, by all accounts, quite an unreliable woman. It meant coming up with something completely new. It meant taking liberties with Harry's behaviour. It meant also making some decisions about what I thought he got up to and what he didn't.
Yeah.
Now, so everybody knows, for example, that I think mostly anyone familiar with the Borley haunting knows that they found the jawbone of a young woman in the ruins of the rectory. There is considerable speculation that what they actually found was the jawbone of a pig, and that Harry deliberately swapped the bones in an effort to draw more publicity to the case. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not. I actually don't think the evidence is there to support that statement, actually. It's not what I believe he did. But from a dramatic point of view, if you're wanting to tell a story about a duplicitous man and his effect on someone else's life, that was the only thing to go with, and that's why I went with that. Sorry to give away any plot spoilers to anyone who hasn't read the book, but but what I wanted to do was to honour his memory by turning that on its head and producing a genuine haunting at the end of the book, which was basically my way of saying, I have a huge amount of sympathy for what Harry Price went through, and I do believe he encountered things at Borley that couldn't be explained.
Yeah.
Do I think he fanned the flames a bit? Yes, of course, but I don't think he was the deceiver that people expect he was.
Right. Was there any facts that you may have uncovered about the case that you didn't put in your book?
So there were a few things I did uncover, and I won't go into all of them now because they were left out of the book for a reason, and for that reason I won't put them on the air. But I would say that something I don't think is in the book, which I'm happy to share, is that I came across a piece of the house. So I actually own a very small piece of Borley Rectory, which is very odd. Actually, I'm looking at it right now. And it came to me actually via a friend who knew I was very interested and got hold of it. I think through a private sale. It's a piece of wood that was taken from the door frame of the ruins of the rectory after the fire that consumed the house, and it has been written about in the literature, and those who have written about it, who have, I think, owned it before me, talk about the fact that whilst they have owned it, strange things have happened to them. Somebody who owned it said it was they actually saw the figure of a nun in their house when they when they owned this thing.
So you're waiting, are you?
Well, I come to this with an open mind, but the journalist who, I think it was taken by a journalist called Monty, who used his penknife to take the wood from the door, and it came to me in a wooden box that, along with Monty's glasses, his spectacles, and the piece of the house, and it's not very big. It's about 3 inches long.
Yeah.
And it smells. If you smell it, it does smell of. I mean, it smells like it's been in a fire,
Yeah.
Which is very odd. But I have to say, I've not looked at it in a while. It's in a box. I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at the box now, but it's in its box, and there we are. It's but I can categorically answer your next question, and no, I have not seen anything unusual whilst it's been in my presence.
Okay.
I've definitely not experienced anything since I've heard it.
Can I just ask, all through you doing all your work to get all your information, was there something that you didn't know that really surprised you that you found?
Was there something I didn't know that really, really surprised me? Yes, there was. And it was probably this moment, actually, when I realised I had the ending for the book. I didn't quite know how to end the book. And then I discovered, and this was actually quite shocking to me, and this is in the book, and this is true. When Harry Price was investigating Borley, they discovered a medal that bore the face of Saint Ignatius. And this medal appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
A lot of people had their own theories about that because Harry was a coin collector in his earlier life, and some people thought maybe he just placed it there. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, I don't know. But what I did not realise was that on the day he died, Harry Price was found basically slumped over his writing desk by his wife. He'd had a heart attack. And he was writing his third book on Borley. But what I did not realise was that when he was found, that medal that he'd found at the rectory was attached to his being. He had it on him. And when I went through his letters, I found out that basically he'd given that medal to his secretary. But she had given it back to him just a few weeks before he died.
Right.
And when she gave it back to him, the letter's there, anyone can go and look at it. She says to him in the letter, "Have you noticed any effects on your health since having it back? I am glad to be rid of it." And I have to say that's absolutely true. And that was completely new to me. And the moment I read that, I remember calling my mother saying, "Oh my God, I know how the book needs to end." It's like, this has to, you end with this. So there we go.
Oh no. Now you've mentioned in the previous interviews that you initially wanted the book to be a screenplay, but you didn't feel that you had the talent to write it. How do you feel now that it has been commissioned for ITV?
Well, it's wonderful news, but I've not written the film that they've done. I am in the film, bizarrely. It was a bit weird, as a sort of cameo in the part, but I've not really been involved in writing it at all. I'm involved as a consultant on the project, so they come to me and ask me questions about character and plot when they need to.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I just feel thrilled, really. I'm just really honoured. I think it's a great honour for anyone to have their work adapted for the screen. And it's been really lucky because my new book, The Watchers, we've currently got 8 film companies in Hollywood sort of going at it to get the rights to do something with that, which is great. But, who knows how that will end. So I'm just really delighted. I'm going to have a go at writing a screenplay next, actually.
Yeah.
I've been asked to do something to do with... I can't say what it is, but it's a very old British mystery that you will have heard of.
Right.
And I'd love to have a go at writing a screenplay around that subject. So, you know, I think you've got to give it a go, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah. How did you feel about...
There was probably...
Sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say, there was probably a time when I would never have imagined writing a book, but, you know, you've got to do these things.
Yeah. How did you feel about having a bit part in the drama? I've seen pictures of you dressed up and...
Oh.
What are you actually playing?
Well, it's funny. Just before I came on air tonight, Suzanne, I got an email from the production company doing it, saying that we're going to get to see it in the not too distant future. But you know, the people who are in it before it goes out, and they said, "Well, do you want to be in it?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to speak or say anything, but I wouldn't mind just being in the background." So there's a scene at the beginning. I won't give anything away, but there's a scene at the beginning where you see a lot of people walking in the street, and hopefully somewhere in that crowd you'll see me. But I don't think you'll be able to recognise me. I prefer it to be that way. I don't think writers should be getting their face in front of the camera. Really, I think our job is.
You're doing your Alfred Hitchcock piece, aren't you?
Oh, a lot of people have said that. I just love writing, to be perfectly honest with you, and that's what I'm going to be doing now. I'm going to dedicate most of my time to writing, so let's see how that goes.
Right, okay. Now, you've mentioned your second novel, The Watchers, which came out recently, which is described as a spooky historical thriller set during the Cold War in a remote coastal village whose residents live in the shadow of an ancient secret. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about this book and why you chose to write it?
Sure. When I was in school, I had a teacher who told me that she'd once taught some school children who'd seen a UFO in the field behind their school, and I wanted to look into this story, and I did. And what I came across was the story of a place called Broadhaven, which is a remote Welsh village in Pembrokeshire, where late one Friday afternoon in 1977, in February, 12 to 14 kids came running in and told their headmaster that they had seen a flying saucer on the ground behind their school. And he was very, very skeptical, obviously, as we all would be, and told them to stop being silly. He had to stop telling them to stop being silly when their parents went to the police and the kids became distraught, at which point they separated all the kids and asked them to draw what they'd seen, and they all drew exactly the same thing, which was the likeness of an object, which was cigar-shaped with a dome on top and a flashing light. Some of the kids said they saw a figure as well. Now, I thought that was a really, really intriguing story. I visited the area, I met some of the kids who all stand by their story, and I decided I had to tell this as my second book, as a novel. And I didn't quite have the way in with the story, but again, I found that way in much the same way as I did with the Harry Price book. I went to the archives, I went to the government archives in Kew, and I came across a document that shows that in 1977, the Ministry of Defence ordered a secret investigation into these happenings and actually consulted with the military police as to whether or not a full investigation was necessary. This was interesting to me because at the time the government were adamant that none of this was of concern and that they had no record of any unusual activity in the area. It now transpires that they did have a record of unusual activity in the area and had explicitly asked for an investigation, which is proof enough to me that our government knows much more about this subject than they're willing to let on, and was enough for me to want to write a book.
Oh, right, that's brilliant.
Well, you know, it's a really, really intriguing case, and I'm certainly, anyone who comes to this story should not do so with the illusion that I'm coming to this subject preaching that aliens are real. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, well, Steve's reading The Watchers.
Oh, are you? Good.
Yes, and I'm reading your Ghost Hunters. So,
well, I hope you enjoy them. They're very different books, but you know, it's.
Well, I'm going to read that one, and then when I've done that, I'm going to going to read Harry Price's The Most Haunted House in England. So the book
yes, that's a good idea actually. Read them. Then you'll be able to see what I left out and what I didn't.
Yeah, definitely. So what's next for you then, Neil?
Well, I'm going to write another Harry Price book.
Mm-hmm.
My publishers have asked me to do another book about Harry Price, which I am going to do. In fact, I've just started it, and I'm going to write a screenplay for a production company about as I said earlier, a British mystery you will have heard of, but I can't mention.
That's fine.
and I'm going to have a go at another novel as well. But the priority now is the television series. So we want to get the Ghost Hunters is not going to be called the Ghost Hunters on TV. It's going to be called Harry Price Ghost Hunter.
Okay.
So it's very, very explicitly about him, and for that reason, I need to write another Harry Price book. Really, it seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah. I must admit, it's amazing
But
how nobody's done it until now.
It is amazing, actually. I have to say, when I came to the idea, I did think, why has nobody ever? If you look at Sherlock Holmes,
Yeah.
you know, it seems like an obvious thing to do, but it was surprised nobody had done it, and the ITV seemed completely thrilled by the fact that Harry Price was real. That it was one of the things they liked most about it. And I don't know. The challenge when you're writing a sequel, of course, is to write about it. There's a passage in the book that says that I think his secretary says, I could write volumes about our investigations together.
Yeah.
But of course, the challenge as a writer is, well, which investigation do you do next?
This is it.
Borley Rectory was probably one of the biggest, but there is a case. If you look through, I'm not going to say what it is right now, but if you look through Harry Price's books and his articles, there is one case, really only one case that I think trumps Borley Rectory, and there is one there. He had so many thrilling investigations, and some of which were a bit of fun, and I'd probably throw Jeff the Talking Mongoose into that category. but there were a few others that I think made him really, really think about what came after death.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we're going to see. But the next book's going to have a lot of fact and fiction thrown in, just like the first one.
Oh, that'd be good. So how can people find out more about you and your books?
I have a website which is neilspring.com, and if you Google The Watchers, you'll see lots of newspaper articles that came out on the day it was published last month. There was coverage in most of the national newspapers about it, because one of the witnesses to the UFO actually came forward, which was really interesting, I thought. I'd just say Google me and have a look at neilspring.com.
Okay, Steve, you got a question?
Yeah, talking about the sequel and saying that his secretary could write volumes. Would you write it from her perspective, like Dr. Watson wrote the stuff on Sherlock Holmes?
I would, yes. Yeah. So in much the same way that the first one is written from her perspective, the second book, which is, it won't be published for ages. I've just written the first 2 chapters of it, so it will be set in the period whilst they're investigating Borley Rectory, but it will be a different case.
Right.
And it will be
brilliant.
It's going to be a bit different to the first, that's all I can say.
Right, okay.
But, yeah.
Well, hopefully you'll come back on and tell us more about that book when it's out then, Neil.
Well, I would love to do that.
Well, it's great to have you on the show again. We love hearing about people's accomplishments, especially yours. We've spoke briefly about, we spoke about The Watchers originally, but today was more about the fact that it's part of a drama, and we wanted to get more in depth into it as well, which we have done, and also touched on the Watchers. So I wish you every success with whatever you do.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you. I'd love to come back on any time. Just ask. That's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you, Neil. You take care, and it's not long now, so I want to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Oh, thank you. It's not long. 10 weeks away.
Yeah. So you.
All right. Thank you very much.
All the best to both of you. So we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Good night and God bless.
Good night.
Good night.
Well, that was Neil Spring. Another good interview there that we had with him, talking about his books.
Yeah, I think he was having a bit of trouble with his Skype as well.
I know.
He seemed
to
keep getting quiet.
I could hardly do anything.
Yeah, it
wasn't just going quiet. It was cutting out. And now they hear blah blah. That's what I was hearing.
We wasn't hearing that. We was hearing it fading and.
Good evening, Daffy.
Daffy. Let me ring you back. See whether it clears, Andy.
No, you're fine. It wasn't you. It was him.
Right. Okay then.
No, we're not backing up much.
So.
Say again.
Yeah, it did sound like he kept moving away from the mic a lot, so we were getting quiet, and every now and again it would break up, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but as I say, it's been a good interview. It's nice to talk about these things, and I look forward to the drama that comes on. I must admit, it's something that I've been waiting for with bated breath. Go on, Andy.
I know from an old girlfriend of mine, her dad is a screenwriter for BBC and others, that you often get commissioned to write projects and you get paid a little bit for that. But once it's commissioned and then booked to be filmed and start filming, that's when the real money comes in. So undoubtedly he's probably earned enough from that to scale on the rest of the year and carry on writing full time. So best of luck to him. He's achieved what a lot of people would like to do.
Yes, so definitely. So, and like you said, that there's interest in his second book as well.
Yes, that sounds. I think I know that. I mean, I couldn't even properly, but I think I know about the case he was actually talking about. The imagery with the pictures that are on his Facebook page with the kids with their drawings. I'm fairly sure I've seen that before, and I've read about what he's talking about. So I'll be honest with you, that interests me more. I think the UFO stuff at the moment. That particular case, I have to say, because I'm sure there's been a Harry Price thing on TV before.
I've not seen anything. Otherwise, I would have watched it.
Through Internet Movie Database and Wiki, and I can't find anything. But
no, but the one thing I like about it is, like he said, they haven't strayed away from his book. You know what I mean? Which is good.
It's highly unusual. So.
It is highly unusual. So and I was pleased that he answered the question about the videotape bit. That was nice.
Yeah. I did put on the chat room there. The first DVD for public release came out of Japan in '97, but I did read the other day when we were looking at it back in '57, I think. There was one made then, and it sold for $50,000.
God, bloody hell! Right, well,
I saw you saying that.
Let me just tell you what's coming on next week, and then I'll also explain to you what's happening with the live stream and everything. Next week we've got Brian Langston on. Now, as you know, Brian has been contributing to some true stories of his for our magazine. Now, Brian was born in Wolverhampton in 1960, and he left the Black Country to join the Thames Valley Police at the age of 19, following a year on the dole, during which he married the girl next door. He served with Thames Valley for 30 years, serving as both uniform and CID roles within the force, and rose to the rank of Assistant Chief Constable, responsible for operations including the responsibility for firearms, public order, civil emergency and royalty protection. He was also a key figure in the London bombings and stuff as well.
The 7/7.
Yeah, I think it was the 7/7 or something, or maybe the one before that. More recently, he has focused on writing and is pursuing his long-standing interest in history, mystery, and the paranormal. He is a member of a regular columnist. He is a member and regular columnist of the Ghost Club, and has written numerous articles for the Ghost Club journals and other paranormal publications. His first book, True Ghosts and Ghouls of Windsor and Eton, is due for release next year. His current project is London Murder Stories, in which he examines historical murders committed after the capital, across the capital over the last 350 years. As I said, he is married to Jenny for 36 years and enjoys spending time with their grandchildren and with each other at their home in the Languedoc, or if that's how you pronounce it, Languedoc region of South France. So that's who's coming on next week. So we'll be finding out more about his book and getting some true stories from him. So and finding out why he decided to take that route. Maybe he had some paranormal connections when it came to being in the police force. We know that the likes of Gary Heseltine, he had investigated UFOs.
Yeah, he
during
set
that time, didn't
something
he?
up so the police officers could actually report it, didn't he?
This is it. So, we'll find out a bit more about that. It's a platform for people to come along and tell us about their books and what have you, and give you the interesting public something to consider reading or looking at. So, right, now let me just explain to you about Livestream, okay? Livestream has changed their format, okay? This is why we've decided to change ours. We've been using Livestream since 2012, but of late they have decided to change their format, and we've been on the original one that they're using, which is like their back burner thing, and they're now using a new Livestream. They've warned me that the original one will be going, and because of this, the new Livestream does imply charges for the basic. They don't do a free one anymore. So this is why we decided to change format.
And it's also less than what we're getting now.
And and we wouldn't have half the stuff of what we're getting now with Livestream. So this is why we've decided to change. Now, on the player, there are 3 or 4 different ways of listening to the show. So all you need to do is just click the link, as it says on the picture. Click here to listen to past shows, because there will be a run of past shows going through the player during the week and live on Sundays at 8 p.m. So if you click that, a pop-up will come up, and then you just click the play. If you're having problems with that, there's a one for, I don't know, iTunes or something or other. Have you got the player up, Steve?
I can bring the player up.
Yeah, just bring the player up. There's Windows Media. I know that much.
Yeah, there's QuickTime.
There's QuickTime.
Real Player.
Yeah.
And Winamp iTunes.
And Winamp iTunes. So there's 4 there that you can choose from if you have any problems. Okay. Basically, I don't want you to see me. No, seriously. I know you like looking at us and seeing what we're doing, and it gives you something to watch. But no, I may use Ustream for our regular viewers if they want to do that. But
if they want to see us.
Yeah, if they want to see us. God, what do you want to look at our ugly mugs for?
And they were just thinking we could sit in the dark.
Yeah. I don't know. So we'll have a look at Ustream, and I looked at that Twitch and it was not any good. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at Ustream and maybe broadcast on there for our regular viewers. But that means we'll have another format to do, as well as Worsley Radio, DM Radio, KTPF Radio. Okay, so, and also don't forget that you can listen now on mobiles. We never had that facility before. You can't do it on live stream. And if mobile listeners can go to it.link/KTPF mobile, that's 2 as in the number 2, go to it. .link/KTPF mobile. So there is a mobile facility on there now, because we used to get a lot of complaints that nobody could listen to it on their mobile. So you can now, and as I say, if you've got a mobile facility and if you want to listen to the show during the week, the player is there, and it will be running some of our shows that we've had on, so you can listen to that too. So
And you've also set up the blog as well.
And we've set, yes, also, if you go on to our menu bar above on the top of the web page, you'll see a podcast link there as well, next to online magazine. And if you go there, I will be putting on 4 podcasts for the latest podcasts that we have on each week. So there'll be 4 there for you to listen to. Alternatively, you can go to our YouTube page and see all of our stuff that's gone back to 2012. And yes, I saw the Viscount there says he uses the image to keep the kids away from the fire.
Cheeky little bugger.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see what we can do for you, Vetraman. Okay, we'll sort that out for next week. But as I say, that is the reason why we decided. And not only that, it kept dropping out as well. And
It is. And also, by next week, oh, excuse me, we will be more proficient with our own one.
I hope so.
I mean, we're fine with everybody else's.
I know, it's our one that was messing
It's
about.
our one that messed about today.
So, I don't know. So, but as I say, we will get the hang of it. It's all teething problems. So, as I say, those that are listening in New Jersey, USA, I hope you're enjoying the show so far. And also those on Worsley Radio.
Yes, and at this point I'd like to thank Ray for all his help.
Yes, definitely. And he has been helping quite a lot. Because I am a pain when it comes to technology. Our Vinny will tell you that. I don't know. So he's getting to know me, Andy.
Oh, right. Yes. No comment from me.
So yes. So as I say, I hope you're enjoying the show. Don't forget, as I said, you can pop into our what do we call it?
It's gone again, isn't it?
Our chat room, which I can't seem to get into.
Why not?
Oh.
I don't know.
Oh, I'm in.
I'm in it.
How did you get in?
Thank you.
I just typed.
Did you?
Well, you was in there a little while ago, or do you mean on the other one?
On the front one.
Yeah.
So, because I wasn't seeing what people were putting for some reason, it seemed to go.
Well,
So-
you was in there earlier because you posted. A couple of times at least.
Yeah.
I don't know what you've done with your chat room. Oh well.
So.
We can see it, so you're all right.
Yes. All very visible.
We saw it just now because you saw what what Vizzy said.
I think I'm in now. That's
You're in
better.
there. Good argument.
Right, what we're going to
Where
do
we
is we're going to have a quick break while we do the forthcoming events, and I'll see you in a bit then, Andy.
Okay.
We've got all the news right here. Don't go away.
Fed up of wading through the activities and events that other advertisers include? Find just what you're looking for at paranormaleventsforyou.com, your one-stop paranormal directory.
Okay, so the first up on the 19th of October, which is only tomorrow, join Mark Pilkington, Mika Hanks and more as they ask the question, what do we really talk about when we talk about UFOs? They are watching the UFOs, the edges of ufology, at the Bell in Middlesex Street, E1 in London. Fourth Element Paranormal are doing a selection of short investigations. 20th of October, they're at the Silvestrian Sports and Social Club. On the 23rd of October, they're at the Hallwood Manor in Runcorn, otherwise known as the Tricorn Hotel. And on the 24th of October, the Barlow Institute in Bolton. Oh, sorry, they're not. It's Paranormal. There was only 2 of them. 24th of October is the Barlow Institute, Bolton. It's Paranormal. Halloween Ghost Hunt at the Jamaica Inn in Cornwall. Also is on the 30th of October. On an evening with the Afterlife with John Six Sense on the 30th. 30th of October, Hay Hall, Wigan is hosted by yours truly at UK Shadow Seekers. 30th of October also, Saltmarsh Hall in East Yorkshire. Ghost Callers UK are there. Derek Akora is still doing his Psychic Ether tour On the 22nd, he's at the Plymouth Casino. That's the Grosvenor's Casino. 23rd, he's in Luton. 29th, he's at the New Brighton Grosvenor's Casino. And 30th, he's at Blackpool Casino. And on the 31st, he's at the Grosvenor's Casino, Coventry. Tony Stockwell still doing his tour, 2015. Tomorrow night, he's at the Memorial Hall in Sheffield. On the 20th, he's at the Grand Theatre in Lancaster. And on the 21st, he's at the Theatre Cymru in Llandudno. For more information on these and other events, visit paranormaleventsforyou.com. So check out the one-stop paranormal directory for more investigations and events available now. Paranormaleventsforyou.com also offers banner advertising for only £10 per year. See our website for more details. Paranormaleventsforyou.com, your one-stop paranormal directory. And don't forget, if you've got any investigations or paranormal events that you'd like us to advertise, we do it for all over the world. So anyone in New Jersey that might be interested in advertising with us, it is free. Just go to our website and follow all the instructions and information. So it's all there for you. Right, okay. What have we got next? Well,
I don't know.
I don't know. Don't you don't know?
Me, I assume. With my silly bit of music.
Next up we have... Andy's Mystery and Conspiracy Files.
It would be very helpful to actually have them on screen, wouldn't it? Oh, there they are. Okay, yes. A little collection of other kinds of oddities that I've come across during the week, which a couple you pointed out to me, which I'd found as well, which... are you doing your one, by the way, Sue?
Yes, yeah, I forgot to do mine. Should I do mine quickly now?
Yes, go on. Have your Tupenneth. It was one Sue and I both discovered at the same time, more or less, and we were both debating who was going to do it, but I think Sue can have this one. So go for it, Sue.
Right, okay, this is my Tupenneth. Well, funny enough, this has been brandished all over Facebook, and today I received an update, or I found an update on the story. So this was updated today. Did Parallel Universe open up 100-sea floating city filmed in skies above China? Now, according to the Metro today, the update is that the weird-looking cloud formation was spotted over Foshan in Guangdong, and again in a few days later in the Jiangxi province. Paranormal Crucible. Let me just make that a bit bigger because I'm going blind. Bear with me. Paranormal Crucible, a website dedicated solely to weird sightings like this, uploaded the footage and said the footage captured by a local resident appears to show a huge city floating in the clouds. I'll just put that into the page for you, so you can have a look for yourself. Mute the soundtrack because it's all in China anyway, Chinese. The apparition, which was witnessed by hundreds of shocked residents, only lasted a few minutes before completely disappearing. But one of our readers got in touch to say they think it originally happened over Hastings. Some people even think these cities are proof of Project Blue Beam, a 2 decades old conspiracy theory that NASA is planning to stimulate an alien invasion of Earth or the second coming of Christ using massive holograms. One person commented, "Notice the group of buildings is repeated 3 times. If it isn't someone making it on their computer, it seriously could be Project Bluebeam." These city-like clouds are caused by an illusion called Fata Morgana, originally known as a mirage. A Fata Morgana is caused when the atmosphere around certain areas heats up and creating a gradient of temperatures. Cooler temperatures stay towards the Earth's surface and the warmer area rises to the top. When the lights hit the boundary between 2 layers that are different temperatures and therefore different densities, it bends and travels at a different angle. Our brains are programmed to assume light travels in a strange line. So when it, in a straight line. So when it bends, we automatically think the object is there where it would have been had the path of light run straight. In this case, light reflected from the skyscrapers bends downwards as it passes through the colder, denser air. Because of the way our brains work, the skyscrapers in the distance look much higher than they really are. Mystery solved. What do you reckon, Andy?
Sounds good to me, your description there. It's certainly not a new phenomenon. I remember reading about an occasion in 1500s, I think it was. Something along those lines, that sort of thing was seen. Also, there was an occasion during the First World War when a phantom army was seen riding across the sky towards the soldiers, which would probably be caused by exactly the same phenomenon. So, no, it's by no means a new phenomenon. I am suspicious of the video because it does, as someone said, repeats the same buildings, which is a little strange. But the phenomenon itself, I think, is a genuine astronomical, atmospheric phenomena. Certainly, yes.
Yeah. So the theory what could have been has actually been solved, in my opinion.
I would tend to agree.
Okay, over to you.
Okay, well, here's my little collection of stories, starting with this one here. A bit of witchcraft. Woman convicted of witchcraft gets a retrial 300 years on. What's the bloody point of that? It's like, what are they going to do, resurrect her? Maria Bottolini Toldini was beheaded in an Italian hamlet of Brentin. I always get the names I can't pronounce. In somewhere in Italy, in 1716. Now a judge has set to hear her case again to bid to vindicate her. I mean, one of those days when I can't read properly. When the council in Brentancchio, an idyllic hamlet nestled at the foothills of the Italian Alps, met 2 weeks ago, the usual debate over school autonomy and use of public land was temporarily shelved aside for a more intriguing agenda. Item. Whether a 60-year-old woman who was condemned to death as a witch nearly 300 years ago deserved to have another day in court. Overwhelmingly, the council decided that she did. Maria, not a particularly extraordinary woman, according to a local historian who has tried to piece together the details of her life. She was a childless widow and had remarried at the time of her arrest in August 1715. Months later, a trove of documents show that she was found guilty of crimes including multiple murders of children, making land barren, don't need to do that, and damaging a local vineyard, blasphemy and heresy. She was even accused of throwing a 5-year-old into a pot of boiling cheese. That's a different one, isn't it? It's boiling water.
That's a new one.
Boiling cheese. Tordini was, well, you know, actually, cheese can actually get very, very hot indeed and can burn. It's quite nasty. Tordini was publicly beheaded and her body was burned in Brentonico's Green. Brentonico's Green manicured public park now lives. So there's a rather interesting little drawing at the top there. You can see her head on a spike and the rest of her body in flames. Lovely. Don't know who drew that. It's quite well drawn. Where are we? Yes. For the man who has led the charge to declare Tordini's name, a local culture minister named Quinto Canili, the effort, which he says will involve a real court judge and a real court of appeals, will be familiar to the laws of the time. I don't understand this really strange idea. I don't know why they're doing this, but in an attempt to come to grips with the brutal period of European history and it's stripped of its folkloric romanticism. Well, I don't think anyone gives the witch trials a folkloric romanticism. It was thousands of murders that were carried out across Europe in the name of nonsense, really. So I don't think anyone sees it as being folkloric romanticism. You know, I won't read the whole lot, but it's interesting what it says a bit later on. Who would have the idea of doing a comedic folkloric show on Auschwitz? Exactly, said a commentator on the idea. It's important now, just as it was important 100 years ago, it would be important 100 years from now. There was a murder which was not justified. That should not have happened. They killed a person without motivations, and with motivations that didn't exist. She was innocent. A historian, Carlo Andrea Osnia, who studied documents from the period, said there were some unknowns in the Tordini case, like who first accused her of witchcraft. but he speculated that, like other women, she was probably targeted by members of her own family and close associates because of an argument, possibly over inheritance. This was, of course, a common, interesting parallel that's being read here. They're talking about the idea of would you do a romantic folkloric show in Auschwitz. If you think the period of the witch trials, it was a lot of the cases where people were being denounced by their neighbours and one-time friends and family relations in order to get them out of the way, to steal their land or their money. And it does parallel the 1930s in Germany when people would denounce people as being Jews to steal their land, steal their money, etc., etc. So there are some chilling parallels there, I think. But the idea that they can somehow exercise this demon of mass crime, mass murder, really, by having some kind of fancy trial for someone who's long been dead, it seems utterly pointless. And to be honest, a waste of Italian taxpayers' money, really. There's better things it could be spent on, but if it's going to make their individual consciousness or collective consciousness be eased by this, then so much for it. Up to them, really. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, it's, I mean, like it also states there, 50 to 60,000 people were killed for allegedly being witches and that, most of which were women at the time.
It's interesting because there are lots of discrepancies regarding the figures. Some have said it maybe as few as only a couple of thousand. I say only, that's a lot of people still. That a lot of the figures may well have been exaggerated by those that were sort of gathering these witches up, if you like, because they got paid for their work. Like Matthew Hopkins, the Essex-based witch finder over here went completely bananas. You know, he was just finding witches everywhere. So he was getting paid to capture them. So creating sort of false records of non-existent witches you've burnt or murdered is quite possible. I know that, as you say, the majority, they are women across Europe, apart from one country where it's slightly different. That was Iceland, where the majority of witches that were killed were actually men. And it wasn't very many, to be honest, because obviously Iceland's population has always been quite small, but that's the only country where the number of men killed for witchcraft or witchcraft-related incidents outnumbered women. So there you go. Anyway, here's my next little story coming up on the screen. It's the ever-faithful good old Mars. Strange things seen on Mars yet again. This is rather silly though. A Buddha statue found on Mars suggests alien life. UFO sightings daily. A UFO sightings daily found an artifact on Mars which looks like the Gautama, there's an A missing in the name there, Buddha statue. The remarkable discovery, spelling mistake in discovery, suggests that aliens were based on the red planet in the past. Not only that, they were intelligent, a few spelling mistakes in here actually, enough to make such artifacts. It is to be noticed that recently NASA confirmed the presence of water on Mars. Yes, that's the important thing. But this image, supposed statue, bears a little resemblance to anything even vaguely like a person, much less Buddha. The enlargement that's next to the actual original image is somewhat stretched, shall we say, and I think it's been fiddled about with Photoshop or something like that to create this effect. Anyway, the statue-like figure appears to be carved, and it is very rare that such a statue would have been found by natural activities. Gautama Buddha in the statue appears to be half-sitting, half-sleeping position, and his face, shoulders, chest, hands are visible in the image. They are? Okay. Also, I have to say, if that is, that's two rather large breasts he's got as well, which would be a bit strange. But going a bit further on, after water presence was confirmed by NASA, another study confirmed that river existed on the red planet, and its ferocious nature caused round shapes of pebbles and dragged them up to 50 kilometers in the riverbed. Existed of water directly points to the existence. I tell you, this is really badly written. Whoever wrote this should say existence of water directly point towards existence of life. It should say existence of water directly points towards existence of life on the planet. Now the statue-like structure is acting like a catalyst. UFO Sightings Daily member Scott Waring said that NASA has already discovered alien life. Oh yeah. And he knows, does he? Okay. But the American Space Agency is hiding the truth from the world. Well, there you go. What a surprise. It's all being hidden by NASA, as always. This photo alone should be enough to convince nations that intelligent life once existed on Mars. But NASA doesn't want to know the truth because they will be asked to share the info and technology they have found, Waring said. Well, if that's the case, Waring, why are we being allowed to see this photograph? It doesn't really add up, does it? Although there might be a chance that the statue is just an illusion. No, really? but it has provided material for conspiracy theorists. And then beneath that is a short video that someone's actually colorized and added additional detail into the image to make it look real. But I mean, I'm sorry, that's just about as real as every other supposed statue we've seen on Mars. It's our good old friend Steve. What's it called?
Aradonia.
Yeah, it's
definitely.
Yeah,
I'm looking at it now, and to be honest, just looks like a pile of rocks.
Exactly.
So it's not until they show you the other bit that's sticking out there, the blown up bit, then you can start to see what they're looking at. But I think it's just a
even
pile
with
of
the
rocks.
blown up, it's got two large breasts. It's hardly the Buddha.
It does. It looks female to me.
Exactly. Oh dear,
But
man.
then again,
It'd be crazy to say it was a statue, but then to conclude it's actually the Buddha is just bizarre. But never mind. Okay, my next story is a lot more serious and really rather sinister actually. But have a look anyway.
I've never actually seen Buddha laying down like that. He always seems to be sitting.
Not sitting back looking over his shoulder. That's very unusual. I've got a statue of reclining Buddha, but not looking over his shoulder. So this story is somewhat more sinister and rather worrying. Evil clown, quotation marks, stalking school children, forced police to deploy additional patrols.
Oh my God.
Terrible headline with a mirror there, completely lacking any punctuation, which makes it hard to read.
As usual.
Kent police are investigating a string of reports in recent weeks of people wearing clown and Halloween masks and travelling around in vans approaching children. I mean, I'm assuming the image you're seeing in this is obviously something they've mocked up themselves, not an actual photograph, but it is pretty sinister. Police have deployed extra patrols around schools following reports of pupils being stalked by people wearing clown masks. Kent police are investigating a number of reports in recent weeks of people travelling around in vans and approaching children. Officers said some people were wearing clown or Halloween masks in a bid to scare pupils walking to and from school. Parents and children in Tunbridge Wells and Tunbridge have been urged by police to be vigilant following suspicious incidents. Excuse me. Chief Inspector Dave Peat said, "We are still working to establish whether any of the offences have been committed. However, I want to assure parents that we take safety of all children very seriously and have extra officers on patrol around schools." Last week, the Mirror Online reported on clowns who were targeting pupils at Highgate School for Girls in Tunbridge, Kent. Since then, there have been reports of people wearing clown masks being spotted in a van in St John's Road, Tunbridge Wells, on Tuesday and Wednesday. Schools in the town issue their own advice after a boy was approached by two men in the van on Wednesday morning. Last week, head teacher Elaine Buchanan sent an email to parents warning them about incidents which happened earlier in the month. She said that some of her students have been approached on separate occasions by two people wearing outfits and white clown masks. The evil clown phenomenon is growing in the UK and especially in France, where one town banning wearing of clown masks following a spate of violent attacks. Well, there you go, guys. You know, funny enough, Maggie and I were talking about this afternoon. I don't know a single person who likes clowns. Most people find them irritating and annoying. Some people find them damn scary. I just think they're just annoying. They're very archaic from an old time of sort of clown humour for the circuses that you just shouldn't really be around anymore. Sort of things you left in the past. But yeah, that's particularly disturbing. I mean, someone's obviously been watching that Stephen King story. What was it called? Remember? That's the one, with the clown in it. Yeah.
Pennywise.
Anyway, well, I can add a little bit to that. Although the clown thing wasn't mentioned, a friend of ours who lives in Kent a couple of weeks ago posted on Facebook warning people about people coming up in vans and talking to children. Because it had been reported a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right. It's,
I think that was in Rochester. That one.
Well, that's in Kent.
Well, that's not very far away from it. It's the same county, but obviously something for people to look out for if people dressed as clowns. Anyway, here's my next story, which I found really quite ridiculous, but we'll eat it anyway. Dutch secret tunnel discovered under Berlin proved Hitler survived World War II and fled to Germany. Fled Germany, not fled to Germany. Could Hitler have survived? Could have fled the ruins of Berlin to live out his days in South America? The theory is being taken seriously for the first time after a shock discovery of a secret tunnel beneath the German capital. Well, I don't know if anyone's ever taken it seriously, and I don't think anyone's still going to take it seriously, but we'll read on anyway. A major 8-part documentary series draws on newly declassified FBI files and makes startling discoveries which suggest Hitler may not have died in the bunker at the end of World War II, after all. Instead, the program ventures he could actually have been spirited out of Berlin under the noses of the invading Soviets. Then, having travelled in a U-boat from Spain, he may have spent the rest of his life plotting the rise of the Fourth Reich in a secret compound in the Argentine jungle. Before I go on further, there's 2 interesting photographs. The one of is actually quite a famous picture of the old Führer being there. It's now been turned white and given lots and lots of wrinkles. And then there's this very strange picture that I have seen around before of what looks like a black woman with a white man with her arm draped around over her, with a man in a white shirt with some kind of a shoulder bag maybe, and a black kind of baseball style cap on. His face is kind of blurred out completely and shows 2 ears, which seem quite large, and no real features. And this has been put forward before as a photograph of Hitler after the Second World War living in South America. Now, there is a whole body posture. I've never seen a photograph of him looking anything like that. Flipping his arm over somebody, it's just a bizarre picture. Why anyone wouldn't claim this is a picture of Hitler post-World War II in South America, God alone knows, but it's done the rounds a few times, this picture. Anyway, reading on a bit further. On an exclusive tour last week of the Tunnel network Hitler had built in Berlin, the Express found out more about the astounding claims. And the process of filming Hunting Hitler, which I have now set up to watch on my old Skybox, is set up, so you're going to have to watch it, which starts on the History Channel on the 2nd of November. The producers have made a discovery that may change the way in which Hitler's demise is viewed by historians. They have found a false wall in a Berlin subway station which could have facilitated the Führer's escape 70 years ago. The program makers described the discovery of the wall as their eureka moment. Really? Okay. Last year, the FBI declassified 700 confidential documents. These indicate that perhaps the greatest war criminal in history may not have committed suicide in the Führer bunker, but instead fled to South America as Nazi Germany collapsed. A secret memo from FBI Director J. Edgar declares that American army officials in Germany have not located Hitler's body, nor is there any reliable sources that say definitely Hitler is dead. Now, I'm not going to read on any further because it just goes on to other conspiracy stuff. A couple of very important points here. Hitler's skull, part of it, is in a museum in Russia. It's been identified as such, with a bullet hole in it, and a part of his jaw is included with it, which matches up with the known dental records at the time. Hitler's body was buried in a field, basically, in what was then East Germany, until the 1960s, and then was dug up and taken to the Soviet Union. This is recorded. Stalin was very much of the opinion of trying to keep the theory that Hitler was alive, and provided some false information both to the Americans and to the British intelligence immediately after the war. His exact motivation behind it was a suggestion that if Hitler was somehow still alive, then it would be a good justification for Soviet Russia to keep hold of Eastern Europe in the hunt for Hitler. But he knew full well he was dead. So it's like basically these American TV producers have picked up a theory that was thrown out deliberately by the Soviets at the end of World War II, and have now swallowed it whole, rather too late. Also worth noticing that, of course, Hoover was in the FBI years after the war, and the Russians were in control of that part of Germany and part of Berlin that had the Führer bunker, and they were not going to let the Americans have access to anything. So, of course, they found no records because they weren't able to access the records. It's just ridiculous. I mean, I'm going to take this program, but I just know it's going to be nonsense. And I'll read on a bit further of this. In Berlin last week, the Express met the investigators, including Bob Beer, an ex-CIA veteran and the model for George Clooney's character in the 2005 film Syriana, one of America's most elite intelligence officers. Never heard of him, but I've heard of him, but didn't know much about him. Tim Kennedy, a top USA Special Forces operative who was part of the unit tracking down Osama bin Laden after 9/11. And Sascha Kiel, a German historian from the Berlin Underworlds Association. The producers have found that there was a mass Nazi exodus from Tempelhof Airport on the 21st of April 1945, the day after the last recorded public sighting of Hitler. On that date, 8 planes were apparently loaded with the Führer's personal effects. The expert team on hunting Hitler initially worked out that the Nazi leader could have made it from his bunker to the airport almost entirely underground, except for the final 200 yards, which were by that point already in Soviet control, so I don't think he'd have got through somehow. Anyway, rumours have long circulated of a hitherto unknown tunnel connecting his final 200 yards from the nearby railway station, once known as U6 and now called Luftbrücke, to the airport. And now, using state-of-the-art sonar devices regularly employed by the US military in their manhunts, the team investigating the mystery of Hitler's possible evasion have unearthed that tunnel. This provides the missing link from the U6 subway to Tempelhof Airport and could have allowed the Fuhrer to escape without being captured above ground by the meandering Soviets. There you go. Do you think Hitler survived the war? There's a survey at the bottom, and a rather alarming 51% think he did, which is just ridiculous. We're all just playing along with a deliberate plan by the Soviets after the Second World War to keep this idea alive. It's now working. 70 years too bloody late for them. There we go. What do you think of that, guys?
Yeah. I mean, I have read something before that said that the people that are actually supposed to be Hitler and his bride were actually somebody else. But if that is the case, then it is actually possible. But like you said, they would have to somebody would have had to have got the identification wrong from dental records.
Absolutely, the dental records are very clear and precise. Most of the jaw remains in that Soviet or Russian records office, and they've been clearly identified both by his own personal dentist at the time and the dental records that were retrieved for Hitler. That it is definitely his jawbone. So if he did survive, he lost his lower jaw while surviving. But also, I mean, this is just because I know what this guy was about. That, the idea that he would be married to or living in sin with a woman of mixed race or black woman.
Not a chance.
It's not going to happen. I mean, one thing we all know about the Nazis is they're extremely racist, believe the Aryan supremacy above all other races. Is either they're going to be marrying a woman that he would have considered to be of lesser species. So it's just utter nonsense. But, people like to make programs on utter nonsense.
Also, the whole body language is wrong there. I mean, every picture I've ever seen of Hitler, he's always been posture, straight back, shoulders up. Never, ever seen a picture of him slouching like that.
No, he would never have allowed it. And even then, if it was him alive post-war, he would never have allowed it. Absolutely not. But it's just one of these. They've come up with some silly idea for a TV program. I thought they've got to obviously push it, so they're bound to start putting things like this on. It's just good old media going mad. Speaking of mad media, this is not far off. This is probably about as likely as the Hitler story. We have Jack the Ripper identity revealed.
I just spotted that. I was about to mention it to you.
Of course, I wasn't going to let this one go. Killer was a Victorian musician protected by the Freemasons. Oh, for Lord's sake, here we go again. Jack the Ripper, the world-famous Victorian music star who was protected by the police because he was a Freemason. And historian sensation he claims today. Well, of course he's going to. You want people to buy his silly book. Anyway, let's go over it, shall we? The explosive new theory says the psychopathic killer was actually a renowned singer-songwriter who penned his hits, which have since been recorded by Vera Lynn and Charlotte Church. Blimey, must be a killer. It claims to be used by his celebrity status to cover up his crimes, allowing him to stalk the streets of London, brutally murdering and mutilating women at will. A new book which states that he was helped by senior officials within the Metropolitan Police who sabotaged evidence, bungled the inquiries, and made a bid to protect their fellow Freemason. Oh, God, this is just such nonsense. Anyway, the stunning claim was made by Withnell and I director. He spent 15 years investigating, cooking up his own version of the story, which he hoped people would... I'm sorry, no, it doesn't say that. In his new book, The All Loved Jack, Busting the Ripper. Oh, God. In it, he unmasks the Ripper as a celebrated musician, Michael Maybrick. Now, interestingly enough, there's been another completely false, vague, totally untrue Ripper identity given to a guy called Frederick Maybrick. So it's interesting the Maybrick name's popped up again, but I don't think they're any relation. Anyway, a Victorian celebrity who toured the country with his world-famous compositions. The author says he began to put the pieces of the jigsaw together after learning that the police had destroyed vital pieces of evidence after one of the murders. Now, I'd be interested to know exactly what pieces of vital evidence they're supposed to destroy, because I'm not entirely aware of any that were deliberately destroyed.
Are they talking about this celebrated writing on the wall that was supposed to have been cleaned off?
Going to talk about. Yeah. Matthew Kello is ordered to wash away the graffiti scrawled on the wall. I assume that's all he's talking about. There's nothing else special. Now, the interesting thing is the wording he's got here, which said the Jews are not the men who will not be blamed for nothing, is not the only version of the wording. There's been a different version. The different policemen who actually were there at the time who made a note of it have worded it differently. They say there's one that says what it says there, the Jews are the men who will not be blamed for nothing. And another one says the Jews are not the men who will do nothing. So you've got different slight wording there. They often draw attention to the Jews spelling. This is often where the Freemason rubbish comes in, because apparently there's one of the Freemason rituals, according to a couple of authors, used the word Jews spelt like that, but that wasn't in use in England up until the 1700s, where it stopped being used. So it seems unlikely. And Warren himself said the reason why he had it removed was the sun was just starting to rise. There'd been a murder. The Jews were already suspected as being the culprits behind the murders. He was hiding it to prevent a near riot when people saw that, having heard there was yet another murder. It seems unfortunate, but actually quite a sensible move on his part. It's just a shame it was never photographed, because it's led to all this nonsense conspiracy. But both the police officers who were there at the time said it was clearly old, partially rubbed off. It had been there for a while. It's just it was going to be drawing attention to, because the police were already there looking at it as the sun was rising. Because a piece of Catherine Eddowes' apron was discovered by it, which suggests obviously very strongly that the murderer must have used that as his route to escape from the scene of his murder. Anyway, Mr. Robinson claims that Warren did this because he was a member of the Freemason Society who knew that Maybrick was the killer. And he was trying to protect him from incriminating evidence. Again, here comes the stupidity. If the Ripper was a Freemason, why in the name of God would he have written it on the wall like that? You know, it just doesn't make any sense. A psychopathic serial killer is a psychopathic serial killer, but it doesn't mean they are going to do strange things like that. You know, by legal definition, they're not insane. So you're not necessarily going to be doing things like that. Anyway, he said the strange act was a light bulb moment that made him start to question whether or not the identity of the Ripper had been protected by servants of the Victorian state. He told the Telegraph, "We've got the ramping main East End, but it suddenly occurred to me I didn't want to catch him. Is there any mileage there?" "No, there isn't, mate. There's none at all." Let's go down that street and pick up another story about Freemasons and Jack the Ripper, because there's not enough of those stories out there already, is there? No, there's nothing more. Anyway, Maybrick was the member of 6 Masonic lodges, including one that was attended by the then Prince of Wales. So, of course, got to bring the royalty in. It's important. I can't leave the royalty out. They've got to be involved somehow, haven't they? Anyway, Mr. Robinson claims to have discovered... Oh, that's good. Mr. Robinson claims to have discovered a conspiracy so complex he could hardly face another day investigating the repugnant men and the repugnant protectors during the research of his 800-page book. Well, I hope his writing skills better than the person who wrote this article. It's terrible. Anyway, Maybrick had been put forward as a suspect in the case in the past, but the author believed that he'd uncovered foolproof evidence to confirm he was the murderer. It includes postmarks on letters allegedly written by the Ripper, which he didn't write any of them. None of them were written by the Ripper. They're all written by news reporters, which he says coincided exactly with Maybrick's tour dates and locations where he travelled around Britain with his musical works. He also believes that a diary initially thought to have been written by Maybrick's brother James Maybrick, yes, which he confessed to the killings was actually written by the musician himself. Now, this guy has really shot himself in the foot now, because the guy who found the James Maybrick diary has admitted he made the Maybrick diary. He faked it himself. So this guy's information is very, very out of date. The diary, you see, previously been dismissed as a hoax, and James himself was murdered by his wife in 1889. They've missed out the simple fact that the guy who found the diary has confessed to making it himself. Stupid. Anyway, Mr. Robinson says his secret life as the Ripper and his subsequent cover-up may also explain why Maybrick was largely been forgotten in history, whilst contemporaries including Gilbert and Sullivan have gone on in history as household names. Gilbert and Sullivan have gone on as household names because they had a opera fair every year. The Dolly Opera Society perform every year, and there was the Glyborn every year. So that's why those names have survived. Anyway, Maybrick was an astonishingly successful musician in his time and a celebrity in his own right. And one of the pieces, Nancy Lee, sold 100,000 copies of sheet music in 2 years, whilst another, The Holy City, has been recorded by Vera Lynn and Charlotte Church. Chillingly, he has also named one piece, They All Love Jack. Oh, bloody hell, I'm giving him a favour. This astonishing 29 people have been accused of notoriety. Yeah, we know that. Anyway. Lots and lots of problems with this, of course. If this guy was touring the country, why the murders are only in the East End? Why are you relying on a diary that's been proven to be absolutely fake? You also ignoring the very important memorandum we talked about before that named the 3 suspects. That anyone who takes the Ripper case seriously knows you can't go outside those 3 names because they are by far the most likely. This is so full of stuff I can't mention. It's ridiculous. And Nick Gutteridge should have learned to write better because his grammar in this is awful. Anyway, that's... what do you think, guys? Am I being too critical?
No. If you're a journalist, you should at least know how to write. I've got another one here that I spotted further down. My great aunt was Jack the Ripper's final victim.
Oh, I saw that, but I didn't actually look at it.
Yeah, after years of research into his family's history, former surgeon Wayne Weston Davis believes he has uncovered the identity of the Victorian serial killer.
Oh, Lord, another one.
Yeah,
oh, yes.
He was a mild-mannered journalist who looked like a cleric and found face-to-face conversation almost impossible to bear. She was a vivacious party girl from a good family who loved to spend her evenings singing. They met through a mutual friend, William Morris, founder of the arts and craft movement. They have not been especially compatible, but Elizabeth Weston Davis was nearly 30 and accepted 50-year-old Francis Craig's proposal. But both were holding secrets that could provide answers to one of Britain's most notorious and horrific unsolved crimes. In August 1885, Elizabeth fled from her 8th-month marriage after her husband unmasked her as a high-class prostitute. But divorce documents revealed that he tracked her down and began stalking her. She changed her name, fled to London's East End, where she worked for an altogether different clientele. And Elizabeth Weston Davis was never heard of again. 3 years later, the prostitute Mary Jane Kelly became Jack the Ripper's 5th and final victim, the culmination of a gruesome 12-week killing spree. But just who was Mary Kelly? Elizabeth's great-nephew, Wynne Weston Davis, a former eminent surgeon and autonomist, believes that it was his great-aunt Elizabeth, who was in fact Mary. He claimed that she adopted her new name in an attempt to escape her husband's control. In his book, he suggests that after changing her name, she became the Ripper's final victim. But what is the most astonishing fact is that he believes that he also uncovered circumstantial evidence to prove that her estranged husband, Francis Craig, was Jack the Ripper.
There is a big problem with this one already.
Goodness.
Well, they say that at the point Elizabeth Davis worked on was nearly 30. And then we've got Mary Jane Kelly, if it's the same person, 3 years later, who was between 22 and 24 years old, 24 at most. So, unless she's gone backwards in time, she would have been in her mid-30s by that point, 33, and she would actually been about 10 years older than Mary Jane Kelly actually definitely was. We don't know exactly her age, because we wouldn't in those days. Yeah, but she's between 22 and 24 years old at that point. She was of Irish descent. There's no mention of Ireland there whatsoever. So it's just another person just trying to write nonsense and hoping that enough ripperologists and sort of general sensationalist people will actually go out and buy it. But it's nonsense again. It's one of those cases that it doesn't matter how much evidence you can produce to show that it was one particular person, either Jewish, Polish immigrant, probably called Kospinski, was Jack the Ripper. It doesn't matter how much evidence we could find to prove that. people will still write books and claim other things because it's one of those topics that people like. There are too many vested interests in that and keeping this as a mystery to really want the books to come out that say here's the definitive absolute proof, because it's out there. There's enough evidence to say this was Jack the Ripper, but easily enough evidence. But people don't want that; they want to keep the mystery going. So
we've got
it's another silly story there.
We've got Jeff Mudgett coming back on in the new year, talking about his book, his ancestor H.H. Holmes, and the fact that he feels he could have been Jack the Ripper, but he isn't saying. You know what I mean?
Not going to give him an easy ride.
Pardon?
He was in England.
He was in England at the time, so he's not saying he was. He's saying
it's a possibility.
It's a possibility.
And we're trying to find out. We're going to find out where he's gone from there. See if he's got any more information.
Yes.
Moved on.
Yeah, there's no way. There's just no way. Basically.
So we're going to find out more about H.H. Holmes anyway. So that's the
main.
That's the main premise of the show.
Oh my God, I might have to tune out for that one because I might have a heart attack otherwise.
No, we're talking about H.H. Holmes, not Jack the Ripper.
Not that he was Jack the Ripper.
No, he did say he has got a teeniest possibility, but we're more talking about H.H. Holmes because it's a relative of his.
Yeah, there's more of a possibility that it's my dead aunt. No, I don't think he's a dog.
I actually think you did it.
Yeah, it was me, absolutely.
You keep dissing all these things just because you know it's yourself.
But at the end of the day, Andy, you can be a bit flippant over it, but he is actually a descendant of H.H. Holmes.
I'm sure he is. That's no problem with that.
Yes, he is. It's just that it is unlikely that he is actually Jack the Ripper.
Obviously,
even though,
but that's not what we're going to be talking about.
Even though H.H. Holmes was a notorious serial killer, and he was in England at the time.
He's not saying he was. No, let me get this right. He's not saying he was Jack the Ripper. He's saying that there could be a possibility that one of the girls attributed to Jack was H.H. Holmes. That's what I meant to have said.
Well, interesting, of course, because as I said, I did my show on it, and those are more seriously inclined have always maintained there's a real possibility that Elizabeth Stride wasn't a Ripper victim at all. So maybe that was Holmes. Who knows?
Yes.
To see what he has to say on that matter. But if he tries to identify any of the other four, then no way that is.
No.
Absolutely.
Because he was saying he was in England at a set period of time.
And it's possible.
And it's possible that some of the killings were him and not Jack the Ripper.
Also, remember there was a guy who wrote a little while back that there was, and actually, funny enough, I put this up somewhere, and the person who wrote it actually responded to what I'd said, who claimed that Jack the Ripper was, what's his name, Vincent van Gogh, because he was in London, or he was actually in South London, around the right kind of time. So therefore he must be Jack the Ripper. Yeah. And she sort of rather took the mickey out of the idea. I think it might have been a YouTube clip or something. And the person who proposed it actually responded. It was none too pleased in my less than glowing compliment, shall we say. I
think where Jeff's coming from is this guy is a murderer. He's a serial killer in America. He comes to England for a couple of months. You don't just stop. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, all of a sudden there's a load of killings here. Then he goes to Europe
and there's a
load of killings there.
Yeah. You know what I mean? He went to Europe as well, and there was a load of killings there. So he's he's thinking that there could be a possibility.
Well, on the other hand, there is a lot of murder was a fairly regular occurrence in that part of the world at that time. The East End of London was, in parts, largely lawless. There was a very, very understaffed, shall we say, police force who could do very little at night because it was dark. No real ability to investigate crimes properly the way we do today. Yeah. There were dozens and dozens of murders that have gone unsolved. I mean, there's something, at the greatest extent, there's something in the order of about 30 that have been attributed to Jack the Ripper, all different deaths that occurred around that kind of time. Now, there's only the 5, or possibly even 4, that fit the same modus in detail, the way that the Ripper's murders do, but there are plenty of other stabbings, not shootings as much as strangulations, mutilations, decapitations, that kind of stuff was going on. Not that uncommon in the area. Certainly multiple stabbings, but it was not being ripped apart and all ripped out the body that we saw the Ripper. That was unusual. But just to be stabbed to death, unfortunately, it was almost as common for a prostitute to be paid as it was to be attacked, shall we say, rather than threatened with a knife and then told to go away when they asked for payment afterwards. That was fairly a common thing, because what could the prostitute do? Who could they turn to? The idea that they all had pimps is an exaggeration, and a few of them, the more the high class, might have had pimps, but most who were just working on the streets on their own. And if the client refused to pay or demanded his money back afterwards with the threat of a knife, which was not uncommon, then there's not much you could do about it. So he may well have committed some of the murders in the East End, without a doubt. It's very good possible he may have done. But certainly none of the Ripper murders, because they were very unique. They were very specific.
Yeah, I mean, if we think about it seriously, there's no way that Jack just suddenly turned up killing like that. He had to get there from somewhere. So it's quite possible that some of the lesser gruesome killings working up to that was Jack.
Well, it's
I mean, people that do that seem to progress to a point where they get caught. So
this is very much the case of the Ripper himself. If you remember that the first murder was only, I say only, it sounds nice and charming, but she was split open. With no organs pulled out the body, they were simply left in situ, but she was split basically from sort of the breastbone right down to underneath. That was the thing. And then another cut, a horizontal cut across the side, but nothing was pulled out, nothing was sort of thrown around without being too graphic. The later ones, we start to see organs removed and thrown around. But also, if you remember when I did my show on it, a lot of my research has been based around following up what Martin Fido said. And he came across an attempted murder, basically, who happened about May, I think it was, of 1898. And the man's description with a knife was quite close to a couple of the descriptions that were given by witnesses to Annie Chapman's murderer, who she was seen with just prior to being found in the back of Hanbury Street, the back of the house. So there's been suggestions that was the Ripper she was with, and the man that Fido's description he discovered was very similar. So he was threatening people with knives before he actually did anything. And I say there is an escalation in terms of the brutality and the violence in those couple of months they occurred. But he's actually relatively unusual for a serial killer to be that rapid in going to kill again. The frequency of murders is usually months rather than a couple of weeks or even a few days. They tend to be further apart because it's one of those, psychologically speaking, one of those kind of drives that builds up and builds up like a kettle boiling. Once it boils over and you commit a murder, it is cessated for a while, and that kind of drive calms down a bit, but it tends to build up again, and then you have to do it again. And often the cycles of that gets shorter and shorter periods. I mean, perhaps one of the most famous modern killers, Ted Bundy, killed possibly hundreds of women, certainly dozens and dozens. And with him, he got close to being caught because the frequency of his murders was getting shorter, the time frame between them. I mean, to the point that he got captured, escaped, killed again, and got captured again. So it's and was actually writing things like "Please stop me" on the walls. So for him, it built up and built up, and the suggestion has been made, and I think there's certainly psychologically speaking validity to it, that he basically he cracked completely. That eventually it became too much, and he just lost it completely. Old Kosminski, possibly Cohen, the man that was described as being outside a brothel in December 1888 and then was taken away by the authorities and locked up because he was just a raving lunatic at this point. So, yeah.
I'm glad you're not coming up in a couple of weeks' time.
What is that?
You know too much.
No.
I could be killed in my bed.
Viscount is wrong in the sense, sorry Vicky, you're wrong, because it seems not so you don't validly just become a serial killer. You do. You have to start at some point. There is always going to be a starting point of your murder. You might be able to hold on to that anger and rage and violence for years and years, and something will then set you off. You talk to people.
This is it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, it's not usually it's that bad. It normally starts with maybe like a stabbing or a cutting, and then builds up to the point where the assailant has perfected where he wants to be, by which time he's usually completely gone.
To be honest with you, that's not the case. If you look at most of the modern serial killers that we know about, they do kind of just start. A good example is like Nigel Nielsen. What's his name? Dennis Nielsen. You know, his first murder happened and he's sort of, I can't remember his age now, but he was kind of, to anybody else looking old from the outside, it was out of the blue. The fact that he spent a night with his dead gran when he was a teenager, she didn't kill her, she died, obviously. When there's any way he could relate to people was with them dead, happened when he was a kid, but there was no crimes committed by him at all until these murders began. There was no previous record of him doing anything himself. He's just missed having company and found that he attacked the one bloke. I'm sure I thought in my head, maybe he attacked one bloke and killed him and thought, well, this is quite nice. He doesn't fight back anymore now. I can be with this person. I like this idea. Most serial killers do go along for years and then something sets them off. You know, if you knew exactly what it was, that would probably be one way to dealing with it. But you do kind of just become a serial killer. You become a killer. Again, like I was saying about maybe they killed mice, cats, whatever, that is, some do. There's evidence for some people doing that, but not evidence for everybody. I mean, it is one of the big mysteries of psychological profiling of serial killers is you don't really know exactly why they start. They do sometimes start just out of the blue. Otherwise, normal, harmless people who don't really appear outwardly to have any kind of problems can have psychological trauma building up for years and years, and then suddenly something causes them to snap.
Well, Son of Sam,
I'm not going to
Son of Sam is
an argument here, but I think he knows what I do for a living. I've studied it for many years to do what I do for a living, so I do have a pretty good idea about human psychology, and he knows that. And I think he's just trying to pull my leg at the moment, Mr. Viscount.
Is there anything else? Weird thingy? Video of the week? Or is
Yes, sorry. No video. Some more interesting websites. So how do they perfect what they do so they don't get caught, able to cover their tracks? Well, most serial killers do get caught in the end, Steve. Most of them have been.
Okay,
there we go.
Jack
First
wasn't.
strange website of the week. People living on Earth, currently at 7,374,788 and writing. What I found with this one, if you look at lots of little blue people, each one apparently represents one person. So you can actually scroll down and see all these billions of people. And each individual person, if you put your cursor on it, is got his own numbered. But what I noticed was, if you look at this for too long, your eyes start to go all really weird. You start to get this really strange change of depth perception. They kind of layer over each other. You stare at it for too long. Have you tried it? Just sort of look straight at it. And it's almost like they start coming out the screen at you. You get that
ain't
effect?
even going there. You find these silly bloody websites. I'm frightened of getting a bloody virus.
No, you've got nothing to download from them. You obviously don't click on any downloads. It's just the website itself can't attack you. But because of the way it's got lots of little blue people, all they're quite small and all exactly the same, they start to overlap each other. You lose sense of depth if you look at it for too long. Your eyes start to get a bit weird. That's the first little weirdness I found.
It's rather concerning that people are being born that quick.
I know, and that regular as well. That's what I find is quite amazing. One after the other, in that sort of same uniform speed of rate of birth. And obviously no one dies because it's going up and up and up. So obviously the rate of death is being outstripped by the rate of birth by at least 2 to 1.
Probably
That's my first one. Here's another one which is a little stranger still, I think. There we go.
Okay.
You've got to be kidding me.
No.
All those ones.com.
But the first thing you see is go to Rupert Murdoch's MySpace to be my friend. MySpace/Kenneth Hung, Hung. Now, for those on radio who obviously can't see this, we're now presented with an image of what look like sort of Japanese superhero women with very short skirts and bright colours, but their faces have all been replaced by those of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And there is a picture of a woman's eyes, but with the rest of the body, some kind of monkey holding onto the Empire State Building, holding a microphone. There's a very, very disturbing image of Arnold Schwarzenegger's face and a woman's body with very large frontal area, wearing this kind of strange Star-Spangled Banner costume with his foot on some person's head. I don't know who the person on the ground is, but if you let the your cursor go over the person's head on the floor, you get a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger putting a very strange face, which is actually moving, and it's very, very disturbing. And it says, "Pump it up," which is really rather worrying. And at the top, there's a banner going across the top that says, "Because Washington is Hollywood for ugly people." Charming. And if you scroll over the faces of Arnold Schwarzenegger, you get Chinese or Japanese writing appear that flashes great speed and very bright, which is rather bad for your eyes. So the person who invented this website is very disturbed. That's all I can say. They've got some strange idea what they think art is. Oh, if you put your mouse arrow over the face of the gorilla thing that's climbing up the Empire State Building, the words "holy plastic beefy" starts to flash in multiple colours on your screen, and it's giving me a headache already just even looking at it. So I think I'll stop doing that. But there you go, some of the stranger websites I managed to discover out there.
Thank you very much, Andy, for your input this week.
No problem at all.
That was just weirdo.
Now,
I've got to say, it's much easier finding weird websites than it is crazy videos of the week, because the videos have to be short, and there aren't that many really good, silly, short ones out there that we're just going to look at. So these websites are much more of a gold mine of silliness.
right, well, news just in on the events side. Bit of a stop press. If you're in the area of Craigienos Castle in South Wales, you can go to Halloween Day Out on Friday the 30th of October from 12 till 5 p.m. Children only ghost tour, bouncy castle, face painting, pumpkin carvings, etc. All for £6.50, and you'll find out more about that at Craigienos Castle. So there you go. All good fun for Halloween.
That means that Steve's going to get dressed up and do his
probably.
bit.
So.
Oh my God! Dressed up as what, Steve? What's he going to dress up as?
Yeah, this is it. We want to see pictures. Now, if you would like to be on the show, then contact us at show@ktpf.co.uk, where we are open to discuss any specific area within these genres, including ghost UFOs, cryptozoology, psychic phenomena, and other supernatural or unexplained mysteries. So remember, it's your show, so get involved. Issue 6 of our magazine that accompanies the show is out now, with contributions from many names within the topics we cover, plus our regular features and much more. Just click on the link on the menu bar to view an online digital flip page version or to download a PDF version for yourself. Although the issues started out monthly, we do them bi-monthly now, so the next one will be in December. And we are always looking for contributions for people within these subjects, i.e. showcasing groups, paranormal groups and organisations, highlighting venues. So if you would like to add an article to the KTPF magazine, then send your articles to editor@ktpf.co.uk, although we regret that we cannot accept every article we receive. Now, if you're into a tongue-in-cheek poke at current and historical facts and fictions, then why not tune in every Thursday evening to A Can of Worms, hosted by Dan Franklin and Jed Hindmarsh, who will be shedding new light or dismissing truths on various topics. Described as the radio show for the curious and questioning mind, you can listen in from 8:30 p.m. UK time on worsleyradio.co.uk. Well, we've come to the end of the show then, guys. That was quick, wasn't it?
Wasn't it?
So we
tonight.
To what, Andy?
This has flown by tonight.
It does.
Well, I could hear the guests for half of it.
We hope you have enjoyed tonight's show, and we have enjoyed your company, and look forward to seeing you again next week from 8 p.m. on www.ktpf.co.uk, Worsley Radio and KTPF Radio, and also DM Radio in New Jersey. We hope our new listeners enjoyed the show too, and will come back and listen to us. I promise I'll try and get it right at the start next week with these encoders and everything. And
it does tend to throw you a little bit.
It does. I must admit, it was my first time tonight. Sorry. So hopefully everything will go well next week. I will also try and sort out Ustream for our regular listeners who likes to see our ugly mug. So I'll put the link up for that for people to see that as well. Okay. And
don't forget, if you missed the show, it will be on our blogcast as well as
our podcast, yes.
Yeah, as well as our usual YouTube channel.
Yeah, so if you go to the top menu bar, you'll see podcasts there. I will be removing the bottom one and replacing each week on the top with our latest one. And if you would like to listen to our previous shows, then you can go to our YouTube page and look for KTPF Community Radio. Was it? Is that what it is? I've forgotten what it is now.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Right.
My head's gone. KTPF Community Show it is on the YouTube channel. So, and they're dating back to 2012. So tonight's thrown me a little bit tonight. I'm sorry about that, but hopefully next week we'll get it right. Over to you, Steve.
Yes, and as we say, thanks for listening to the KTPF Community Talk Show, which is supported by Phenomena Magazine and Beyond Parazine.
Andy, what you got tonight, this week, mate?
Nothing exciting, the usual stuff. Quite busy work-wise. It's nice at the moment. Mandy's away for most of the week. She's off to the Netherlands on a conference. So I'm going to be here on my lonesome, but I shall be doing some more research. My book is with my publisher. It's been redrafted, the diagrams in it, so it should be out fairly soon, I hope. And I'm also working on my second book, which I've written on runes, which I'm adding some more material to. I've recently become involved in a rune group online. And there's some interesting information there, which I need to incorporate into my bag. My book. My man is saying, look at me with a bag in my hand.
Your room bag, huh? Those of you that are not sure what he's on about, a couple of weeks ago, he spoke about his new book, which is based on John Dee, the mathematician and scientist and magician from way back when. And if you listen,
all-round spooky guy.
Yes. And if you go to our podcast page on this website, you'll be able to listen to that if you're interested in listening about John Dee. And Andy also mentions about his book. Correct, Andy?
Yes, I have. Just recap that because I forget we've got new guests in the audience now that I've written a book. I've actually got two books with a publisher. One is on John Dee, which is the Elizabethan astrologer royal Queen Elizabeth I, but he was also the channel, I think is one way of putting it, of Enochian magic, which is a system of magic which is quite strange and surreal. My second book is on runes, which covers a subject which is a little difficult. It's called the Armanen runes, which have been linked to the Nazis before, but they're not Nazi runes at all. So, so that's what I'll be working on this week. As I say, I've joined a rune group online, and it's a closed group, but it's got some very interesting information, which I think I need to incorporate into my book. So I should do a bit of rewriting of that. But the Enochian Magic book should be out later this year. It's been a bit delayed because the artist who's redrawn some of the art symbolism that was in the book, unfortunately, was ill himself for a while. Now he's back and working, so hopefully it'll only be a short delay.
Okay, so until next time, thank you, Andy. Until next time, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from her.
And it's good night from everybody else. Yay!
So until next time, all that's left to say is keep the paranormal friendly. Good night and God bless.
Guys.
This is where it's at.
From ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night, visit our ghost store and next time you might be able to show what just gave you a fright.
So for all of your investigation needs, with over 100 products in stock waiting for dispatch within 24 hours, you need to visit theukghoststore.com.